just a bloke in a bar.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Bloke in a Bar. Absolutely huge news for the first month of the NRL season. Myself, Guru, and Timmy were doing a live show tour all across the country. We're coming to Armidale, Wagga, Cairns and Rockhampton. There'll be plenty of beer. It's powered by Ringers Western. So we'll be doing a collab with them in regards to merchandise. Ringers Western have been fantastic enough to support us. They're obviously a huge part of the country community. So Bloke Live Tour of the Country, powered by Ringers Western, coming rounds 1 to 4 of the NRL season. But we're going to speak about something other than NRL today. We're going to speak about the great Drew Mitchell. How you going, brother?
Mate, I'm good. I'm actually a little bit nervous. Obviously a bit out of my wheelhouse here in the NRL, well, the rugby league headquarters, as you put it when I walked in.
The Mecca of rugby league. As I said, it's Suncorp and then it's Bloke Studios.
Yeah,
that's what they're saying. Not me. That's just the grapevine kind of stuff.
Well, mate, I've been hearing some good things, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, we're not as grubby as we may come across footy players. Have you felt any kind of grubbiness as you walked in or not yet?
No, well, yeah, not yet. See, the fact that you said not yet means that there's potential for it to come. But no, look, I think it's a nice decor in here. I feel good. The beer's nice, of course, Bloke in a Bar, but also it's chilled. So, mate, I'm pretty happy at the moment.
Mate, how's it been? Obviously, you've got your media work with Channel 9. And do you do some stuff with Stan as well?
Yeah. So basically, it's I guess the way that it's set up, it's a dual contract. So all games are live and ad-free, little plug, on Stan. Yeah. But then we also have a simultaneous broadcast for our Saturday night games on Channel 9, which do have commercial breaks. Yeah. So it's the same product that's going out to both platforms, but just, I guess, slightly different with the ad breaks on Channel 9.
Is there any difference in you working with the Stan and the 9 in the sense of like from a creation standpoint or not really?
Mate, to be honest, the weekend broadcast is largely done by Channel 9 and the Widewater Sports team. Yep. And then the midweek stuff is largely done by the Stan team. So they're the midweek shows between two posts and Rugby Heaven. It's not exclusive to that, but that's probably the easiest way to explain it. So, I mean, I guess they're just sort of different types of things. The broadcast going into a game is, it's the build-up and the pre-game shows and that sort of thing is a little bit different to, your magazine type shows that we have through the week with Stan.
I got to let you in on one of the worst calls in history. So probably would have been 4 or 5 years ago, I met my wife now and we were talking about Stan.
Yeah.
And me being a fucking savvy businessman was like, I just don't see it working, eh?
Yeah,
I just don't see Stan working. Like they're up against the big dogs, Netflix, and okay, they got some decent content, but Netflix is too dominant. Yeah, clearly wrong. Stan is absolutely killing it.
Yeah, they're going well.
What's funny is like she was a consumer of Stan content, so she's doesn't have that much experience in business. But as a consumer, she was like pushing back against me going, no, I don't think you understand. Because I didn't consume the content. I just looked at it. Right. And so she was like pushing back, like, I don't think you understand. They have a really good range of stuff that you can't really get anywhere else. Yeah. And so, the missus was right. The missus was right.
Yeah, she was, mate. They always are. We just had, I think it's the 8th year anniversary little party just a couple of weeks ago. So that was nice.
Mate, it's, as I said, it's going incredibly well. Like the streaming, like the streaming war. Like imagine the headaches that they'd be facing every day in regards to like trying to find margin, not charging too much.
Well, and it's also like value add to subscription ad, right? So like when we've got obviously Stan Sport, and they have to look at trying to bring on new sports. We've got the 4 majors in the tennis. We've got rugby, and we've got some motorsports. I think there's PFL, the MMA competition as well, which might get a bit of a boost with Jake Paul signing on as a contracted fighter for them. So, but I think my understanding is that they need obviously subscribers, right? Subscribers bring cash and brings eyeballs to the platform, and it's about what do they include onto the platform that adds value or what adds subscribers, and I guess that's for the people above my pay grade to determine.
But they've got like the double-edged sort of, not only are they fighting a streaming war, they don't want to eat their own 9 audience as well. So it's like, whereas like Netflix is purely like, we are here to disrupt old school networks. Whereas 9 are this crazy balance of
And I think probably they're probably still trying to work out exactly where that balance is, right? And when you look at the tennis, and this is just from an outsider's point of view because I'm not privy to any of these discussions or numbers, but with Stan having every single game live and Channel 9, I think they may have had it on 9 Now or the app. And obviously the big ones on Channel 9 and Gem. But I guess it's a balancing act as to what platform or TV station gets exclusive rights to what coverage, so they get those eyeballs.
And so, outside of your media stuff, are you doing anything else?
Mate, I've just started. I'm about 4 weeks into a new career. It's funny. I guess I'm 38, going on 39, and I honestly I've just started to feel like I've grown up a little bit. Like,
oh, mate.
Yeah, and I say that because this is my first real job. I'm working in commercial real estate for a company called Burgess Rawson. I've got no history in this. I've got no study in this, but I've found through conversation, I just felt like I needed a little bit more routine for one, but also chasing outcomes. I mean, I think when you play footy for 15 odd years professionally, that everything's outcome based, whether it's your individual or team collective training sessions each day, each week, the outcomes of games. It can all be broken down to either being positive or being negative. And obviously the positive is great, but you also learn from the negatives. And I just felt like I was missing those types of outcomes and chasing KPIs and learning from the losses and also just being stimulated in something that I'd not been privy to before. It's as you know, when you finish a career in sport where your voice has a lot of weight to it.
Well, mine didn't have that much weight. I was a fucking winger. And
right. But I mean, and then I guess whenever you start something new, you're the one that you've just got to be humbled and you understand that you start on the bottom run of the ladder, but then it's the same tenacity and work ethic and application and those types of things that will give me the confidence that I don't know necessarily the content right now, but I know how to apply myself and I can learn the skill. But the drive and the passion and that type of stuff, is something that I feel like I can transfer across into this new world. And when I go back to saying I feel like I've grown up, mate, like I'm taking real joy, weirdly, because I grew up in a family with my old man was in the army, and it was very strict and regimented, and chores every morning, whatever, and having to iron my own uniforms and stuff. I thought that was those days behind me, but
no,
yeah, mate, I'm finding joy on a Sunday night just ironing up. Yeah,
you
ironing
are your
up.
Dad, bro.
I know, I am. So I'm kind of finding joy in that. Weirdly as well, I'm enjoying getting on the bus and a train on the way to work.
No way.
Yeah,
do you podcast it up? What do you do? Read or?
Well, sometimes I actually catch the bus and train with Adam Ashley Cooper, former teammate, really good mate of mine. That I basically save him a seat. I'm 3 stops before him, and he gets on the bus with a coffee for me. So
no way, both in suits?
Yeah, both in suits. He started a job, a business development job for a tech startup called Resolve. Little plug for you there, Swoop. A little business brokering company on the same street in the city the same day.
No way.
Yeah, and so we're sort of going through this journey together, and our first jobs in the real world. I don't know what the leagueies call it, but when you have a bit of a share house in Union, and you say there's a number of players that play, and then there's maybe a civilian, for lack of a better term. The boys call them a muggle. So you've got you've got a wizard, and you've got the powers, and then you've got a muggle who's got no powers. And so obviously we're taking photos of ourselves on the bus and on the train now, and sending it to our group chats to all the boys, and they're like, that's real muggle life. You guys we're muggles now.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
We're enjoying that.
That's interesting. The same day. It's
mate.
crazy.
Honestly, I put up a post the other day on my LinkedIn. Adam and I are born 1 day apart, same year, same month. I'm Wallaby 799, he's Wallaby 800. My mum's name's Karen, his mum's name's Karen, spelt the same. What? Like, we've just got like all these like weird sort of synergies that, just really hard to explain. And then I said, oh mate, I'm starting a job next week. And he's like, oh yeah. I said, on Monday. And he said, oh, whereabouts? I said, at Castlereagh. And he was happy for me. He goes, bro, fuck. He goes, I start a job on the same day on the same street. Like, there's just there's some real sort of weird synergies. And we grew up competing against each other, and normally you don't become best mates with the bloke that you're trying to get the same jersey, But I was his celebrant. I'm the best man the godfather to his eldest boy, and got a really good relationship.
Crazy. It's interesting in regards to what you're talking about. Hey, you've got to kind of humble yourself as a footy player. Like, obviously, I make jokes being a wing or whatever, but it happens in like all work kind of forces. I'm not sure if it happened for you. I assume you probably had a bit of a better workforce, but when I started my mature age apprenticeship as an electrician, and I was working in like above ground mines, coal terminals, there were guys that were like they wanted to put it over me. They wanted to be like, you might think you're a footy player, but making me do menial tasks that literally mean nothing.
Yeah.
Just to see me beneath them. And you've got to swallow your pride and go, you know what, I'm an apprentice. Like, I got to cop it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, obviously everyone has sort of different experiences with that and different industries and things, but I think there's, it's one of those things as well. Like, I get it if someone was upset with my position now. Like, if someone came into the Wallabies after me being there 15 years and they hadn't had any prior experience, and they got the same jersey as me, I'd be like, oh, hang on a minute.
100%.
I would expect them to prove themselves. So, hopefully, obviously it's early days for me at the moment, and there's a lot of sort of information and ingestion going on, and trying to absorb as much as I can. But hopefully over time that my colleagues and to be fair, my colleagues have been fantastic. Like everyone's gone out of their way to help me and to make me feel comfortable. I think it's probably more me feeling uncomfortable,
like imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome, yeah. And and like I said, I'll keep working hard to make sure I understand the skill and learn the skill through those things I talked about with drive and application and things. But
for sure. And so what's a day look like? Like, what do you actually do for work?
Well, mate, so I'm sort of a sales executive in commercial properties. So at the moment, I'm co-agent, or I'm about to be co-agent on 4 upcoming listings. And all, like everyone sort of says, stick to what you know. So 3 of those are bar/restaurants. One's a nightclub. So basically, just go out there and we if we can obtain a listing, and then do all the IMs and the marketing and all the lease agreements and all that sort of stuff, and then get out there and try and hustle a little bit to try and find them buyers. It's effective. That's probably that in layman terms. But mate, I'm sitting there now. Like I legitimately went from a 9 to 5 Stan/Netflix job, right? But meaning I didn't have any routine in my day. Like I was like waking up and just thinking, all right, nothing's on, just roll back over. 11 o'clock, I should probably get out of bed, but because I could, right? And and that's good for a period of time. And I felt like, that's nice. I'd worked really hard for a long period of time.
You'd earned that.
I earned that for a while, but then having too much time off can also be really bad, like mental health and even just like creativity and just getting tasks done. Like I'd have some of the easiest tasks to do, like 5 things to do in the day, and I'd like as small as I put in the bins out, and I'll be like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Like just because you're not busy. Like they say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, right? Because they're already up and being productive. I wasn't that guy. So I guess the normal day for me was just really quite chilled and kind of just go with whatever I was feeling like at the time. Which I said, which is great for a period. But now I've got some structure and I'm enjoying it. Coming from footy, everything's structured. Like you know where to be, you know what to eat, you know what to wear, and
how to think even.
Sometimes, exactly. And even like I find now, like, which is really bad to say, I guess, but I guess when you're playing footy, they basically put you in a position where you can be as selfish as possible, right? So you can prepare as well as possible, you can recover, and you can go out there and execute your game as well as possible. And that means that you don't even have to think for yourself sometimes. Like, going through the airport, because we do a lot of international travel in rugby, going through the airport, I just had to look up and follow people who dress like me, right? And not even think about what gate, customs or whatever. If I needed a form, someone handed me a form. And I just, so now like when I'm traveling, or like just the other day with my new role, I had the HR lady email me and say, Drew, we need all your information around tax file number and superannuation and your banking so we can pay you. And I was like, oh man, like I've had an agent, do this all the time, and my agent wasn't available at the time, and I just went. I tried probably for half a day, and I called her back. I said, "Hi, Angela." I said, "Thanks, but can you just pay me next month?" I said, "I just don't really know how to do all this stuff. Like, I need some more time to work it out." So, like all those little things, I suppose. Whilst it's great to help you prepare for a game in those times, it makes it harder for when you transition if you're not across just how to be an adult.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. It's it goes as far as like when you walk in to training, there's a table and you've got like tablets, protein, everything is lined up, and you're just like boom, boom, boom. You walk straight in, you sit on the bed, you're strapped, you're like everything, like.
It's almost like, remember the Jetsons when we were growing up? You get on the conveyor belt and they go through, they wash you, then they clothe you, and then they do like brush your teeth. All that. That's pretty much what it is.
It really is, because like they want to control, and rightly so. You want to win games, like do whatever. They want to control as much as they can control, because then you're the best you can be for that purpose, kind of thing. It's the tax file number. It's always like it's like the hardest thing ever to find. You type in tax file number in your email to try and find it because it's like from 6 years ago, and it's like all these like random things that have tax in it or file or number, and you're like, what the hell? So I'm feeling it, bro. Look,
and anything that says tax, I just delete. I'm the quintessential head in the sand kind of guy.
So it takes us back to a young fella. Obviously, now, are you a New South Welshman or a Queenslander? Because obviously you played for the Reds. But
mate, I've always supported the Blues in State of Origin.
How dare you, sir?
I was born out at Liverpool. My old man was stationed at Holsworthy in the Army. I've got 2 older brothers and mum and dad. Mum and I were born in New South Wales. My 2 brothers are in Queensland. And my dad was born down in Victoria, so he kind of doesn't really matter in terms of State of Origin.
That doesn't matter, period.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck Victoria, man.
And so I'd always gone for New South Wales and rugby league. I think once I started playing rugby at 13 up in Queensland, I obviously started watching the Reds. I'd go out to the Reds games and grew a real sort of affinity towards them, and obviously then got to start playing for them as well, which was cool. But I don't know. I think now, like, maybe it's recency bias or whatever, but like even because I finished with the Waratahs, like I kind of, I claim all 3 of the teams I played for, but I don't know. I find I'm more.
When I think of you, I think Blues jersey.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
It's interesting how certain like clubs just stick with players more for some reason. Whatever, I don't know what the reason is.
Yeah, I don't know, because I played about 35 to 36 games for each of the 3 teams.
It's about the same, yeah. 35, 38, 39.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. So, I didn't sort of... the only team I played for a long period was Toulon. I got like 80-odd games for Toulon.
We don't...
That's just because you play a shitload of games each year. Anyway, so upbringing, dad in the Army, like I said, moved around a lot. Just because he was getting posted every sort of 12 to 18 months or so, which, people say, oh, how was that? And I was like, well, I loved it because I didn't know anything different, right? And sport was my vehicle to kind of make friends and to find my way in established circles in schools or whatever I just turned up to. And like sometimes, more often than not, we're in sort of army-based type areas like Puckapungyal down in Victoria or Townsville or Holsworthy, wherever. Or Dad was at... North Head there at Manly for a little while. So you kind of sometimes in environments with other army kids. So they understand the whole in and out kind of nature of the, I guess, the family life. But sport was definitely my way of finding my feet within those circles. And sport for me early was rugby league.
Yeah, really? Okay. Yeah. It's interesting how I always found sport as like a way to earn respect quickly. Like, it takes a while to get to know someone's personality, but as a young, I can only speak for boys because I was a young boy. Yeah. Young boys, if you're good at sport, you immediately get the general consensus that you're...
He's all right.
He's all right.
We'll give him a go at least.
We'll give him a go, exactly. Whereas if you come out and play like a busted, it's like, it's almost a knock against your name.
Yeah, you're still eating by yourself at lunchtime.
Which is like bizarre, but you're right, it is a really good way to get you into new groups of people.
Yeah, and I think moving forward in... my life, like I went to sort of 6 different primary schools, and I went to the one secondary school when Dad was up in
so essentially one a year.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then Dad went up to we went up to Queensland. He was based at Enoggera, and he kind of moved within roles within the same army base for a while, which allowed me to go to the one secondary school, which was St Pat's up at Shorncliffe.
Yep.
But after 2 years, I remember I don't mind saying at 14, I'd go into my mum and dad crying at night, just like not wanting to go back.
Yeah, wow.
Because I was so familiar with change. And I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt this uneasiness. Not because I wasn't enjoying school, but I just felt like I needed some change. Yeah, and I'm really grateful that obviously they didn't listen to a crying 14-year-old, that they knew better. And they obviously just kind of got me through that period. And then, I stayed there, and I've got some of those I've still got some of those mates and my closest mates from that time as well. And love my time at St. Pat's.
That's really interesting that you went the opposite way. You know, like a lot of kids, I guess when you hear about moving around all the time, it almost affects them where they're constantly fighting that move, whereas you almost embraced it and enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, I think then if you look at my professional career, it's almost mirrored that, right? Like I had 4 years at the Reds, 3 at the Force, 4 at the Tars, then again wanted to change, went to Toulon.
Yeah.
And these were, luckily enough, changes that I wanted, not because I was forced out. You know, I still had an option to stay at each one of those teams when I was looking at the change. But yeah, I don't know. Change to me is comfortable. Change to me is familiar, and and so I back myself in those situations, and I guess, you know, in terms of integrating into the social part of it as well, I'd be pretty quiet initially, and I'd just observe a lot. And after observing enough, I'd work out where I fit in, and then people would start to get to know me a bit more.
And so you said you played league growing up.
Yeah.
Who was your team?
Mate, I started as a real young fella for Townsville Centrals.
Yeah.
I think Gordy Tallis, I think, is from up there.
The great Gordy Tallis.
Mate, barefoot and bindies all over the fields, yeah. And then I had, from there, went down to Victoria, so we had 3 years of AFL, but then came up to Manly, and I was Belrose Eagle.
No way. Who was your NRL team?
Growing up, it was always Penrith.
Really?
Yeah, Penrith, because I think they were the first team from when I could remember that they won that year.
Okay.
91, was it? Yeah.
Okay.
So I was, 7. So that's probably about right. The first one that I could properly remember.
Would that have been Freddie?
Royce Simmons.
No.
And yeah, Freddie.
Oh, was Freddie? Yeah.
Yeah. Like Freddie growing up, his left foot, like, all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was sort of my team growing up. I'm less on them now.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you could claim non-bandwagon.
Yeah, but I don't know. I found it hard.
Really?
Yeah.
Who?
That being said, I sat there at the grand final last year with a Penrith jersey on.
Okay.
But I'm also I've jumped on the Roosters more from when I was playing at the Waratahs, because we shared facilities.
Yeah. So you know most
I just got to know a lot more of those boys, and you know, the cafe there at the Sydney Football Stadium. We got to know a lot of them and just sort of be around and whatever. And then I'm living in the East as well, so it kind of just made a bit more sense than jumping on a team that that was my first memory.
I don't know, bro.
Yeah,
I think you're a bit of a Western Sydney boy, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I mean, I fly over it every now and then. But yeah. So yeah, then Belrose Eagles went up to Queensland. I was Brothers Holy Spirit, but then jumped across to Aspley Devils was my last team.
Yep. And what made you move to Union? Was it because of university?
Mate, no. So no, it was just secondary school. So year 8 at 13, I was playing both. Like I'd play league on a Friday night, Union on Saturdays. And did all that and through until 17. At school, played in one league competition, Confraternity Shield.
I played in,
I played that at St Brennan's in Yeppoon.
They're the gun side.
In 2001. I think they maybe had Brett Seymour my year.
No way, so you're 1984, I'm 98, so I would have been 3 years. So that's the first thing that I played and got. Yeah, right. Whatever,
yeah. And to be fair, that was where I almost made a decision to go to league, because I had an approach from the Bulldogs at the time. For like a Jersey Flag or something type situation, and I also had Queensland Reds, and then I just remembered someone say, Drew, obviously with respect to all your listeners and viewers, because I know that I'm the fish out of water here, but they would say, they said, Drew, with rugby league you can play in Townsville and Newcastle. With rugby union you can play in Paris and London.
That's true.
You know what? That was what appealed to me at the time. So
it's just I think most leagues fans will admit that. You know? Like it's the one thing even the most diehard league fan has to admit is the world part of rugby.
Yeah, and I think and that's the one thing that the union guys have to admit, is that domestically we're nowhere near on the competitive level in terms of like engagement, and league's got 16 teams, or how many teams now that the Dolphins are in? 17, and we've got 5 here in Australia. And we're still trying to work out what our local product is, because we've got Super Rugby Pacific now, with the Kiwi teams plus Fiji and Moana Pacifica, but we've changed from having Argentina, Japan, South Africa. We're still trying to work out that, I guess, domestic level competition, what's best for us to be able to engage an audience, and whereas internationally, that's where our game thrives.
Oh, mate.
Which, with respect, I'd argue that it's almost the opposite, right? like the NRL and State of Origin domestically, is like couldn't be better.
Yeah.
But then you look at the World Cup, it's growing. Absolutely, it's growing. There's no
not great.
but it's just not on that on the scale of the Rugby World Cup. But it's kind of the opposites, you know.
A good union international game is some of the best sport you can watch, I reckon.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, you know, I grew up watching league. I love league. I still watch a lot of league each and every weekend. But I also have, you know, a really strong love for rugby. And and I sometimes get drawn into the whole league versus union, and I just don't know why it has to be one versus the other. Like, I don't know why we can't just coexist. You know, I think we should celebrate the differences of the game rather than try to make them both the same and argue that one's better because they're slightly better at one thing than the other. Like, you know, like ours is a little bit different in terms of there's a contest every tackle, like every breakdown, a line out, a scrum, like everything's a genuine contest. And I understand at the moment, I think rugby here in these parts of the world are struggle because of the rugby league mindset that we have growing up. And I say that because, you know, you watch the NRL and the State of Origin and the hits that they put on and, you know, and the shoulders and where it hits on, you know, like we love that, right? We're conditioned to that down here. Whereas world rugby up in the north, they're not as conditioned to rugby league, right? You know, the Frenchies and the Irish, the ones that are like running the world rugby, they don't see all that. They're not conditioned with it from, you know, from a young age. So they're like, to them, that's brutal. And so then obviously when they're making these determinations around the law variations that we've got, they would just go, no, like we're talking about below waist height now. Like come on, like that's, you know, I get that we've got to try and protect the player, but we've got to protect the game. And also there's got to be some type of like if you're signing up to play a contact sport, you understand you're going to have to, you're going to get some contact at some point.
I'm with you. And and that's coming, you're a player. I'm a player. Like, you've both, but you've been concussed. I've been concussed. So if there's people that should be arguing, oh, no, we need to protect the players, it would be the people that have actually suffered from less measures. But I agree with you that we should do everything we can within our power to protect the players. But there has to come a line where we go, you are accepting some responsibility by playing this sport.
It's like boxers come out and go, well, I've got concussion. Like, well, kind of, mate, it kind of comes with the territory. Not that I'm saying that they're one and the same, but I mean, I think, you know, there's going to be rugby accidents, and there's going to be times, I think even more so, when you put your head down and trying to tuck around the legs and you get a knee or you get a boot, and the hips as well. Like, I mean, like, I don't think it's a silver bullet they're looking for. But anyway, going back to the rugby league union thing, I think that, largely that a lot of our viewers here and people and fans and everyone are conditioned to rugby league quite a lot because we grow up with it and we see those big hits and it's celebrated, right? Like everything on Channel 9 for the State of Origin, it's a huge hit and it's bang and it's like Hollywood type, you know, celebrated type hits, right? And then you go and watch rugby and that's a yellow card or that's a red card and you're like, oh man, seriously? Or there's TMOs all the time slowing the game down. So I understand why it can be frustrating, but I think it's more frustrating for fans down here in Australia and New Zealand because we have those, that we're conditioned that way. Whereas like the people up in the north aren't complaining about it, man.
Really.
The French, and that's the scary thing for rugby fans and supporters down here is because like
they don't get it.
They don't care. They're just like, well, no, they're like, we're protecting the game because they don't want future class actions and lawsuits. They're protecting the player and they're not getting too many grumblings from too many quarters like they would be down here. So
it's a really, really good point because I've spoken to Maddie a bit about it, my missus as well. Having played soccer my whole life, I said, I think a lot of rugby league fans don't realise how desensitized we've become to such a brutal sport. You know, some would argue, I don't think so. I think MMA and boxing is still the toughest sport in the world. But some would argue it's just as physical as that. And we do it every single week. And so you're totally right. Like, as Australian, as a culture, it's normal for, go play rugby league. Like, it's just a normal thing. Whereas if I said, go do some MMA, someone would go, whoa mate, that's crazy. And yet the amount of contact you get in a league game and even a union game too is equal. Like, we play every single week, not 3 times a year. I'm not saying it's as tough as MMA. No. But there is it's comparable. It's comparable.
I mean, like, right from from when you first start at school, you're playing bull rush on the back oval and you're whacking each other.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like you're conditioned to it right from the start. So, I mean, I think that's probably one thing that we're probably up against at the moment down here, and because we're governed by World Rugby law variations, and they're going really hard around the tackle at the moment.
Yeah,
that it's making it difficult for us to engage. The sort of the sporting fan, not the die-hard rugby fan, but the sporting fan, which we need to engage, because the next 10 years for us is a great opportunity. We've got the World Cup this year in France. We've got the British and Irish Lions coming, which is once every 12 years in 2025, hosting the World Cup in 27 men's, and then the 29 women's World Cup here in Australia. Yeah. So there's a great opportunity for us to engage, but also, for funding and everything else that can come with hosting all those events. But there's also, we've got to find a way to cut through the people's hesitation or frustration. Yeah, probably more to the point.
And how do you engage that young audience that doesn't really appreciate the history of the game and the deeper side of things when you're competing with things like the UFC, where you're seeing knockouts every week? This excitement. It's almost like it's designed for social media. These 30-second clips of the craziest shit you've ever seen, and every sport has to compete with that.
Yeah, mate, it's hard, right? Because also access is huge now, right? Like everyone's got access to their favourite players, whether it's social media or, I remember when I was growing up, like Freddie Fittler and those guys, the only bit you saw was them on the weekend playing or the odd interview on the news throughout the week, right? Now we're getting to know what they eat, what car they drive, what they do on the weekend, everything, basically everything they want to give us in terms of their life. Yeah. We've got access to it. We've also got direct contact if they want to read their DMs or tweets and things like that. So it's a difficult time now because we're all in the same market trying to get to the same group of fans. And how do you cut through that, right? And it's when you look at rugby union, we've got 5 teams in all of Australia, one in New South Wales and Queensland, ACT, Melbourne and Perth. We can't touch the flesh. We can't press the flesh like the 17 NRL teams or the 18 AFL teams like they can, because they've just got more players, right? Yeah. More capacity to go out to junior and regional and rural teams. And I've said almost ad nauseum to a number of people within rugby that I think the modern day signature on a footy. Remember when you were growing up and an old player came to you? I remember Tony Carroll came to Holy Spirit, right? Yep. And I remember going little drill where you go around the end and you one-on-one, you tried tackling around his legs, and of course he just sort of fell over and it made me feel really good, right? But he signed my ball, and I was just always growing up. I've always remembered that, right? Yeah. But I think the modern day signature on your footy is a selfie, right? Because every kid's got a selfie. They've got a device, right? Yeah. And so I've said a number of times, if the players can't get to regional or rural areas because of travel and preparation and recovery requirements and things, get 10 of your best players in a room and they do 100 1-minute videos. Takes not under 2 hours they'll be done, right? You got your backdrop, and then you just go, okay, you got 100 lists of kids' names. Yep. Hey Jessica, it's Michael Hooper here, blah blah blah. Great that you're a Waratahs supporter, and whatever it is, right? Yep. Send it out, right? They receive that. They show all their friends at school. Their friends at school go, oh, I want one of those. So they go to that training camp the next time, or the festival the next time. Their friends or their family or their grandparents put it on Facebook. All of a sudden, we're getting this awareness and this interaction engagement that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And it took 2 hours for 10 players each just to get out. And 100, that's 1,000 videos going out. And then the engagement you can get off all those. That to me is super simple. Yeah. And imagine getting a personalised video when you're 8. Oh, well, from one of the big stars, from Trell Mitt, from all these guys, right?
So for Chrissy, went and saw my nephews, and one of their favourite players was Jaden Campbell, and one was Brian To'o. Yeah. And I messaged the boys and asked them, hey, could you send through a video? And they were literally in tears. Yeah. There's both my nephews in tears. They were that happy.
That becomes a core memory as well, right? And they'd be their favourite players moving forward, but also how many of their friends would they have told about them? Oh, yeah. And even more. And then all of a sudden, the impact of that video is far greater. Yeah. So that's where I think that we could be better in terms of, when I say rugby could be better. Yeah. Yeah, we have limited numbers, but we've just got to be a little smarter in terms of how we engage. And that's not a costly, it's not a costly exercise. Sitting in there and literally on selfie mode.
And like you're with your mates, so you're having fun anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're with the boys, like you got to get through 100. You stop every now and then, talk shit, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so I think there's ways that we can cut through it, and I think there's definitely like a need for it because it's a competitive market here, right?
Yeah.
And when there's things that aren't helping with TMO like interjections and the tackle height and the amount of TMO and like all these things that have just the frustration that's coming out on social media. If you're across all that narrative, then there are other ways that we can kind of lift the spirits, I suppose, of fans.
Sure. For sure, absolutely. And speaking to parents, one advantage you can have is the fact that you are taking more measures in regards to the safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's like, even though from a consumer's point of view of watching it, it's like, are you serious? He just got sent 10 for that or whatever.
Yeah.
But from getting young kids into the game, you can use it as an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, we just got to like spin the narrative around on it. But also it's great that we've been sort of leaders in that space to protect the player. But I still think we need to make sure that's not at the cost of the game.
Oh, mate, I'm with you 100%. Yeah. So basically, you decided to go to the Reds due to the international side of things.
Yep.
And you rock up, is it the 2003 leading into 2004?
Yeah, I think so.
So you would have done the 2003 pre-season,
yeah.
And then you made your debut 2004?
Yeah.
Was it something, because was that the first year out of school for you?
No, I had 1 year in between where I was at the Reds College, played first grade for UQ.
What'd you study at uni?
Nothing. No, I just played there.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I when I was at the Reds College, they tried getting me to do a university degree, and it was when I just was going through that 2003 preseason. And Miranda Banks, she was the the career kind of advisor there at the Reds Academy, and I just, it got to a point where I could do both okay, but none particularly well. I just couldn't. I just needed to put all my focus in one of those things, and of course at that point it was going to be rugby, right? Yeah. So I think I was doing some sort of business degree or whatever, like just a generic business degree to be doing something.
I was doing a Bachelor of Marketing. I reckon I went to about two classes, and then they said, this assignment's due. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I literally walked straight down, deferred, and then I've never contacted them again. So I've probably got some huge hex.
Yeah, you probably do actually. I just think if you're not passionate about it, then there's not really any point at that point. Well, for me anyway, because I just wasn't committing to it. It was distracting me from things that I was really passionate about and trying to commit to. So, I just played for UQ, didn't study there. And then 2003, it was a bit surreal because through that time at St Pat's, I'd always looked up to Chris Latham, who's a left-footed fullback from playing for Queensland. I'm left-footed, playing fullback at the time, and my first preseason, I'm literally holding his feet, like stretching his hammies, like it was. Yeah, that was sort of like a bit of a shock for me, a bit surreal. I'm like, this is real,
he's the guy that I've been watching on TV, and he's the man too.
Yeah,
he's right there.
Yeah,
he's right there.
I mean, I could tear his hammy if I just pushed this a little bit too far. But then, of course, then we had Wendell Saylor, and we had
great,
Elton Flatley, and all these great players, right? That I was learning off, and it was tough. Like I was 80 kilos wringing wet. Yeah, playing in my first year because we had so many injuries. Playing 13, I hadn't played 13 ever in my life.
And that's outside centre.
Outside centre, yeah. And I'd go into contact, and Tana Umang would just hold me up. My feet were just flapping in the wind.
And we're talking centres in Union can get as high as 110 kilos.
Yeah.
Like big.
Yeah,
boys.
I was quick, but I wasn't strong, man. That preseason, I was maxing out on 60 in the bench.
No.
And Todd Kefu and these guys come up, I'll warm up with you, bro. And I was like, I'm finished. And I was on my first set, but I just was like, I'm not going to let these guys know I'm maxing out.
Yeah.
So I just walk off.
60 kilos.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So that first preseason, was it a real shock to the system of
wow, we had a guy, Steve Nance, who I think used to do quite a lot of the Broncos pre-seasons, and he'd basically just jump on a bike and ride, and we just have to chase him.
Really?
Oh man, it was long, it was tough, and it was hard on the body. I didn't even have a license at that point. I was getting lifts to training, I was getting trains, I was sleeping on people's lounges, and then basically got to a point where I was like, okay, I need a license. So obviously didn't have enough time to learn how to drive a manual, so I just got a license to steer, basically. Got the
I got the automatic, too, bro.
Yeah.
There's no shame in it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, especially now, like, manual cars are sort of a dying breed. So
seriously.
Soon we don't even have to have anything. They'll just drive them for us. But
what's funny is I'm with you. Like, I used to almost be ashamed to say that I could drive a manual.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm less of a man.
Yeah. But now I'm comfortable enough. I'm like, whatever.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah. But, it was tough, man. Like, it was like all the physical stuff, like I just struggled in that. All the wrestling.
You could probably run all day fitness-wise.
Yeah. And the speed, like those areas where I could hold my own, but then there was a real like chasm when anything was physical.
Yeah.
Like I was a bitch. Like, just like that's how it was. And then I obviously needed to then put weight on pretty quickly. And it's always that fine balancing out, putting weight on, but maintaining strength and muscle. And I had a series of hamstring issues and, all that sort of do it too quick and you overload and then they pop. But, got to run and
2004 made your debut?
Yeah, for the Reds, yeah.
Do you remember what was the conversation?
I think it was in Invercargill, which is like... I remember going into the airport where it says like McDonald's, the most southern McDonald's in the world. it's cold, man. And ever in winter, and I was playing against this Fijian centre, Tani Vula, that's just a beast. And I just didn't want to be actually, of course I wanted to be there, but I was on the bench.
Freezing.
And I was freezing and they're like, Drew, get up. And then it's like opposing 13 was just on fire.
Oh no.
And I was like shivering and I went out and played and it was great to get that experience. But there's probably more glamorous places to make a debut. But
who was the team you played against?
The Highlanders.
The Highlanders.
Yeah.
Were they were pretty dominant around that period? Or?
Yeah, they're pretty strong. They're just like like the southern folk, like hard sort of farming type. That's they were a strong side. I mean, to be fair, like most Kiwi teams are always pretty strong, no matter when you come up against them. But
is there any play that you remember from the game at all? Like feeling that first contact, or an error, or a try that you scored, or anything?
No, not really. Not really from the first game. My first try, I remember, I was playing against the Brumbies, and we were getting like towelled up, and I scored late and carried on.
Oh no!
And I got the whole, mate, fucking, you're getting flogged, mate, pull your head in. And to me, it was just like, to me, it was like a small little personal milestone. Yeah. And I get it. Like, I get it now when I'm like, dude, pull your head in. Like,
so were you like,
you're getting
flogged? You on these ones?
Yeah, I think so. And then I kind of like, once I heard like one of the senior players, the Brumbies, like rip into me, I was like, yeah, but I was also like running back kind of somewhat proud of myself, but also feeling like, mate, you've just pork chopped yourself. Because
so it was the Brumbies dude that was like, mate, you're getting tailed up.
Yeah. And I remember that game as well. George Gregan, like every time the ball came to me, whether it was a kickoff or whatever, like they'd call me Apples.
Oh, really?
Like he'd be just behind the defensive line, just going Apples, and I just didn't know what Apples meant. And then my first Wallaby camp later that year, someone let it out that Apples meant apple turnover because I always turned the ball over.
No way.
Because I was so light and so weak that in the breakdown, if they went at me, if they called Apples, it was because they like go at me.
Yeah, wow.
On the break on the ground, I just was too weak to get it back, and they turned it over, and that broke my heart, man. Like I'm like, this guy, like he was my captain for the Wallabies that like later that year, and he's like he thinks that less like that low of me that I've got the nickname apple turnover. Man, so when I got older, I started calling some other younger kids Apples, just because I knew exactly how much it hurts.
What did Gregan say to you when you were like, oh, were you so young that you just kind of...
No, so he was my first roommate on my first training camp at Coffs Harbour later that year in 2004. And to be honest, I just didn't really say much to him.
Yeah,
like,
young
we had like an adjoining sort of service department. So we had separate rooms, but we had like one common area, like with the kitchen and stuff. And Greg's, obviously his coffee, he'd make you coffee. And I'd never had coffee before that. Yeah. And he'd be like, oh, mate, do you want an affogato? And I was like, sure. Didn't even know what an affogato was. It's like, your espresso shot over a scoop of ice cream. And like, I would just sit there at night, just be like wired, because never had like the coffee before. And so just like, it'd smoke me. And I'd just be like this. And then I'd be up really early because I'm so anxious of being late because Eddie Jones would just tell you a new one. And so I barely slept that week. Then Greg's invited me over for dinner. He cooked up this nice pasta. And I'm like, what do I have in common with like, Greg's married with kids and like, like business guy and this and that. And I'm like just coming in 18, like bleach my hair and you know, like what?
Because you would have the long hair.
Yeah, I had the long straight like bleached hair. I mean, the straightening was natural, but the color definitely wasn't. But I just remember just like not wanting to offend, not wanting to try and ask the wrong questions. So probably just sat there like pretty mute, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also kind of knowing behind that he thinks I'm Apple's turnover.
Oh man, that would have eaten you. You're lying in bed going.
Yeah.
Is that how
it would have broken me if he asked me if I want an apple pie or something for dessert?
And then like,
I'm like, too much, mate.
It's interesting. It's almost the reverse situation now with young fellas where they are super open and loud and talk. And so there's good things that come with that where you get to see their personality, they feel more comfortable. Whereas I feel like our generation coming through, it was an issue for us where we were too scared to say anything. Yeah. And they would sometimes the senior players would take that as they don't want to be here or you know, not all the time, but sometimes. You know what I think it is, especially in rugby. You can let me know if it's the same with the league, but I think the makeup of a squad has flipped. So when I was first starting, it was 80% players over 25, you know, 20% of younger guys coming in, right? It was a rarity that you get someone like a Matt Giddo that was picked out of nowhere, and in a squad of 30, you have like a couple of young boys. Yeah. Now it's the other way. Now it's a rarity to have a couple of blokes over 30 in a squad. Yeah. You know, like it's been a real like flip. So then that means the average age of players is much lower, and that's, you know, then they're more comfortable in their environment because they're just, you know, the players of the same and similar age. So, so I think with that, then obviously, like you say, there's good and bad because they've got a voice and they want to use it, but then sometimes that's a bad thing as well. They've got to know when to use it, and also like with that respect of players that have been there before. Yeah, it's interesting. As I said, like there's good and bads to both sides of things. Like I think some people get a bit too caught up in, this next generation are too loud, this, and rightly so. There is a part of that. Yeah. But at the same time, sometimes when we see these rookies come through and they're filled with confidence and they make these big plays, that's where it comes from. It comes from this crazy confidence. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a funny thing as a supporter, right? Because we praise them when they do make those decisions and it goes well. Yeah. But then when it doesn't go well, we blow up. Yeah. And you're like, well, hang on, like you've got to let them like succeed and also failure, but with the same type of mindset. And then learning from those experiences, hopefully they learn from those experiences. Yeah. And don't just keep doing the same thing over and over. keep chasing in the middle of the field, right? But sometimes maybe that's the right option, right? And maybe the execution was poor or whatever. But we're really quick to judge people on the outcome of something rather than the intent. Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. Okay, so your first... Did you make your debut? You made your debut 2005 though. With the so 2004 I went on tour. You'd have been space. Like, well, you just go, what's going on? Mate, like I had to carry Wally, the like little mascot toy, and used to get stolen. I used to get tanned. I don't know if league do it, but basically you just in a kangaroo court session, if I'd lost the mascot for any amount of days, I had to go up and pull my strides down and Radiki Samo or someone just just a big, like, you know, this power slap thing with Dana White, but it was around your ass, and I would like be quivering and I'd have like trickles of blood going down my hamstring just from my ass cheeks. And I was too shy and nervous to press on players. Like I'd knock around. I remember going to Stephen Larkham's room and I was like, oh, excuse me, Stephen, do you have Wall in? He's like, no, mate, like come in and have a look if you want. I just sort of went, surface level look, like what I didn't realise, he'd used the lanyard that I had it like tied on to hang on a coat hanger, and it was just between his clothes. So if I just had have done that, I would have found it, right? And saved myself, like, you know, I guess a real spanking. But yeah, so anyway, I went through that tour. I played a midweek game against the French Barbarians, which is not capped, and then got on the bench for the test match against England at Twickenham, last game of the year, the last game of the tour, last game of the year. And myself and Matt Henjak were at halftime, and Eddie Jones comes in and said, guys, get ready. Like, you're going on soon. And we're like, fuck, how good is this? Like, my parents had flown over. We're going on at Twickenham, big game. But then it got a bit tighter, and our guys went on to win, and myself and Matty Henjak rode out the full 80 minutes on the Pine, which means you didn't get capped. Yeah. And obviously I'm pumped because the boys won, but there's also part of me was like, you know, like I was really close to achieving like a childhood dream, you know? Yeah. And then to not have that, then John Muggleton, who's, you know, one of the Parramatta Eel greats from back in their heyday,
he was our defensive coach, and he came up and he put his arm around me and he goes, "Don't worry, mate. You're not ready anyway." I was like,
Oh my
fucking
God.
hell. Apples and that in the same year. I was like, geez, I'm being tested. But, and you know what? Maybe he was right. I don't know. But I don't know if that was the right time to tell me. But yeah, and so I just had to wait until July, I think, in the following season.
It's like, it's funny when you're that age, you are so desperate to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
You feel like time's running out, but you're so young.
Yeah.
And, you know, your older self would probably speak to your younger self and say, mate, just be patient and keep working hard. And I'm sure you did keep working hard, but it does hit you quite hard.
Mate, I honestly, there'll be a time soon where we talk about where I didn't keep working hard, right? Because, like you say, once you get your first cap, you never want to be the guy that only ever played one cap.
Yeah.
So you worry about your second. Once you get through there, you want to get double digits, so you get 10. Like, you're just so... It's weird how, like, part of us just wants to get to all these little milestones without actually... like sitting in the moment and like appreciating what we've got at the time, right? And so 2005, I played 10 test matches, pretty much all the tests that year. Played well, and just thought, how good's this? You know, I went on holiday after 2005 and just like feet up, like how good, just
no training,
no
nothing.
training.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I was still young enough to bounce back quick enough. Evidently, I wasn't. 2006 wasn't a great season for me. There was a change in coach. John Connolly came in. And after the Super Rugby season, I was driving into the physio at Ballymore, and there was a bunch of players warming up out on the back field. And I went into physio. I said, "Oh, who are those guys training?" And they go, "Oh, it's the 44-man Wallaby squad." So that was how I found out that I didn't even make the 44-man squad.
Wow.
Yeah, like that was, you know, you talk about now like not getting a phone call or finding out over Zoom or whatever. They were the days where, like, if you didn't get picked, you either see it on the news or you like I drove past at the car park at Ballymore and realised.
No way.
And I didn't play a test match, not one, all 2006.
Did that? I mean, obviously there would have been that initial hit of disappointment, almost your gut dropping. How long did it take for you to go, almost the fire be lit then?
To be honest, probably a little longer than it should have, because obviously I was probably...
kicking rocks.
Well, and also probably governed by ego, right?
Yeah, okay.
It's not my fault. This is bullshit.
Yeah,
they got it wrong.
Yeah.
You know, whatever, new coach and all that sort of stuff, right? And it's one of those ones where, you know, it took me a little while to kind of just go, okay, like, you're the only one responsible because of those holidays I went on, and because of the extra sessions I wasn't doing, and because of those 60 kilo bench presses that I was still doing rather than progressing or whatever it might have been. But that was probably once I got past that was the moment I realized that talent got you so far, right? And it had to be talent. You had to have a good relationship between talent and hard work. And that relationship was severed for me at that period. Yeah. And I needed to kind of get my ass into gear to get back to working hard.
And just take it back a little bit, your debut for the Wallabies. What do you remember from that?
Mate, I was on the bench again against South Africa. We're doing pretty well, except we had like a lot of injuries in the back line. We had, so when I came on, Morgan Turanui came off with a calf tear like 5 minutes into the second half. And so again, I went on at centre. But I had Big Dell at 12.
The big fella.
Big Dell at 12.
So big.
Look, Big Dell's got some skills, but passing ain't one of them.
Oh, no.
Kicking's not another. And defensive and
was he wearing those gloves too?
Wearing the gloves.
Oh, he's not passing with those gloves.
I had Matty Rogers outside me as well. But yeah, they were already doing a really good job in that first 45 minutes, and we kicked on with it and had a pretty comfortable win. And Matty Rogers I think he got an intercept off our own line. He ran about 40, 50 odd metres before Brian Abena ran him down, and then threw it over to me, and I was able to kind of avoid Brian and get a try.
Debut.
Yeah, get a try on debut, and then going inside, obviously getting my cap, singing the anthem, and then I had to scull a beer for my debut, and then also a beer for my first try. So I sculled two, and I was vomiting into a bucket, and I had this hand reach out, and it was Johnny Howard because he was in the sheds at the time. So just had to wipe the mouth and shake the Prime Minister's hand, and but yeah, so like I got some good memories from my test debut.
Are you sitting there? Did the enormity of what had just occurred in your life hit you then, or did it take a few years?
I mean, I think it did at times because, you know, you get your jersey presentation the night before and someone like John Eales will do the jersey presentation, say some really cool things. But like going back to your room and I like having that like tangible jersey and got the crest, but you also got Australia versus South Africa, Sydney, July, whatever the date is and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, you know, that's sort of like where it's like, okay, this is real, you know, like, and I was always someone that I found out pretty quickly when I first started professionally that I couldn't mimic someone else's preparation. I tried to mimic Latho because he was someone I looked up to, but he was a different person to me. I tried to like literally do everything that he'd do. He'd shadow everything that he'd do and realised pretty quickly that's not my preparation. Then I'd room with Wendell on a game day and he'd be in his red Speedos and you
nailed it. That's your preparation.
Yeah, but mate, and we'd be sitting in the Sofitel up in Brizzy. And that was back in the day where you had the phone, like the phone accounts for your TAB. TAB 1864609, Sailor, 20 each way. You know, you had a phone account, right?
Yeah.
And we just sit there and watch like races all day. I go, mate, we've got to go down for a pre-game meal. He's like, no. Like, and then there'd be a knock on the door, 2 steak sandwiches, chips, and a couple of Coca-Colas come in, and I'm like, oh, this is how you do it. I'm like, okay. And then I pretty quickly learnt that I don't prepare like Wendell either. You know, I kind of had to find what my preparation was. And the other thing I've realised pretty quickly was I couldn't concentrate for a long period of time before a game. You know, like some players just have to be zen and they just think through things and they visualise and whatever. It got pretty apparent to me that if I did that, I'd be mentally exhausted and I'd play the game before I actually got out there to play it, right? And so and this obviously took time and experience, whatever, but I got to a point where I could bank on the preparation I'd done and not worry about it and not think about it and go out there and enjoy myself and enjoy the warm up and like, you know, and always pick my targets, the players that were like-minded, but, you know, have a bit of a sing, have a bit of a joke with the physio or the water guy or whatever and, you know, like find people in the crowd and that sort of thing. But I always knew when to then switch it on. But then I'd vomit just before, like literally 3 minutes before every game. The moment they go 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever, like to bring everyone in, like I'm straight out. And because that was the first time I'm proper thinking about the game, I get overwhelmed, I just go and throw. And then I'd be like, just join the team huddle with like red eyes and a couple of tears. Yeah, a couple of tears. They're like, you're right? I'm like, yeah, I'm right. But I did that at school. I did it at club level, even when I was playing the Wallabies. I go back to play club. Played some sub-districts footy for Balmain, did the same thing like that. That just became what I did, and not because of anything other than I'd suppress the nerves and then I'd just allow it to flush me, and then I'd go out and play.
Yeah, that's wow.
Like my first test start was against New Zealand. I think the week after 2 weeks after my test debut, and again, Tana Umaga was like calling me out in the press saying, we're going to, because I was playing fullback in this game, we're going to test this young fullback under the high ball, like, you know, naming me, and I'm like, shit. Then I go out there and I face the haka, and it may not have been the case, but it felt like Tana was just staring at me, right? And I just was like, don't look away from him because then he'll think you're a pussy. But then I'm thinking in my head as well, I'm like, but if you keep looking at him, he's going to think you're challenging him. And I'm like, I was in this like weird, like, oh, like, what am I thinking here? And so, you know, I continued to kind of stare, but tried not to be like too tough looking, which is also impossible if you looked at me at that point with my long straight Justin Bieber hair. But anyway, about 25 minutes, 30 minutes into that game, I scored a try off the back of a scrum. Yeah. And I got back to halfway and just vomited.
No way.
Yeah, I just got photos of it. And that was when I just was like, the pressure was just released. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I can compete out here. Yeah, you know? Okay. And that was sort of where I just went, I got a lot of belief from that try. Not because of the try itself, just because I'm like, okay, stop doubting yourself. Yeah. So some high pressure situations, but
do you feel like, have you struggled with anxiety outside of sport?
Yeah, mate, I've got that's anxiety, and I have probably that's the longest relationship I've had. I mean, look, I'm not afraid to talk about it. Like, it's something that that has been pretty like ever present, especially more so towards the back end of my career and retiring. Yeah, I take medication for it now, and I just think it's like when I was retiring. Obviously, we hear of the troubles and the struggles that players have in that transition, and so I started to think about, okay, how am I going to help myself with inevitably what's coming, right? Yeah. And so I thought, okay, I need to speak to a therapist. not because of anything at that particular time, but I thought I need to equip myself with the tools to try and avoid certain things rather than get in them and then find a way to get out of them, right? I had teammates that have taken their life and friends and, everyone sort of, unfortunately, everyone's probably linked to some type of experience or situation like this. So I thought, okay, since I was a kid, I've had a coach or a teacher and everything, right? Your ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, walking. You're at school. Your first coach in footy. Like, you've got a coach and a teacher and everything, except for life itself. Yeah. Like, we rely to be our coaches and teachers in life situations to be our nearest and dearest, but it's not always the realest type of feedback that you get, right? Like, I could do anything and my mum would go, "No, love, you're right." Like, you're doing great or whatever. Yeah. Whereas, sometimes you need someone to tell you, "No, you're an asshole," or "You've done the wrong thing," or "You're going down the wrong path," whatever. Which, look, my parents are really good at that as well, in certain situations. But I just felt like there are times, and even like, it's easier to talk to some people that you don't know. Yeah. Weirdly. Yeah. It's easier to talk to someone you've never met in your life. Yeah. And get some advice or get the tools to help you with different situations, or even understanding, like, why am I reacting like this every time I'm faced with this sort of situation? Yeah. It's because of something that happened to me when I was young, or something that happened at this time, whatever. So anyway, it's a long-winded sort of answer to the fact that, anxiety and I go sort of, that's my plus one. Yeah. But, I think it's also, like, exercising is great, having routine for me, having purpose, all these types of things, but also trying not to be reactive, like not waiting for things to blow up, because as we know, things are good for a period of time, but then they're not. Yeah. But then also things are bad for a period of time until they're not as well. So, it's trying not to wait until things are bad to do something about it. Yeah. It's super smart to be proactive rather than reactive. Yeah. I mean, I say that as well, but there's still periods of time where I go to my therapist for, pretty consistently, and then I'm like, I'm on top of the world, and then I just stop, and then I'm like, and then I'm not on top of the world. I'm like, oh, can I have an appointment or whatever? So I mean, it's about having, formulating habits, right? Yeah. And, and I guess identifying the benefit that you get from them. Yeah. Do you think you being really good at sport almost, it didn't mask the issue, not at all, you were vomiting. But like, because you achieve such great things, it almost like let you release your, I'm good. Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, I guess when I was younger, I just thought, this is how you feel. Anxiety was nerves. Right? Yeah, like, I was the same. I just I thought it was nervous. Yeah, yeah. Whereas now I'm old enough and mature enough and experienced enough in situations where I'm like, there's a distinct difference between having those butterflies in your belly and the running man legs in bed, like there's a difference between anxiety and nervousness. Or like feeling sick in your chest. Yeah, or just tired or whatever. Like, however it presents itself, it's easy to identify for me now what's nerves and what's anxiety. Yeah. It's such an important thing, because I think, a guy like yourself, you achieve so much, but it's really good for blokes listening right now to know, like, if you've got anxiety about your job or whatever it is, and it doesn't get spoken about much, but like, a lot of men do have anxiety about their jobs and how much they're getting paid and can they provide for their family. Well, that's that's what it is, right? Anxiety is like worrying about things that haven't happened yet. Yeah. Right. Whether it's am I going to be able to pay for this, or am I going to be able to provide, or all these types of things. So it's really trying as best you can. Of course it's impossible to do this all the time. Yeah. Unless maybe, I don't know, shallow monks or something, or whoever who have achieved that. But to try and stay present, right? Yeah. Like and not to allow yourself to I guess be sidetracked with things that haven't happened yet. Yeah. Because they may not even happen. Yeah. It's like worrying is almost punishing yourself twice. Yeah. Because you're punishing yourself in the moment, and then if it does happen, you're punished as well. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's actually, I think a lot of the community that listens to this podcast, they may be surprised at how many athletes genuinely have like anxiety about certain things. Like I struggle with anxiety, not as much anymore, but when I was playing, massively. Like, no one was allowed to call me at all during the day. Yeah. No one was allowed to text me. If you did, you knew I was going to be filthy at you the next day. Yeah. And that was all because I was so... And don't get me wrong, it's hard because it's almost like your superpower as well. Yeah. Because it makes you so fucking tuned in. Yeah, yeah. And so it's trying to find that balance of not negatively affecting yourself, but also using that energy in the right direction kind of thing. Yeah, in the right way, yeah. Anyway, so you make your debut
and then you get back into the side in 2007. Was the fact that the World Cup was coming an extra motivator, or was it very, very personal to you that you wanted to get back in?
I mean, it was both. Obviously, like World Cup's our pinnacle. We spoke about it earlier. But I was also like heavily embarrassed from playing 10 tests in 2005 to then not even making a wider group in 2006. I did towards the back end. I went on the tour, but didn't play a game. But you know, I was filthy at myself because I knew a lot of it was because of myself, right? Yeah, there were great players playing great footy at the time, but I also really didn't give myself a proper chance by not preparing well and not putting myself in a position physically, applying myself mentally, but also like doing the homework around video and all that sort of stuff. I just was like, I was cutting corners, right? And then basically I just got cut off. So I 2007, that was like towards the back end of 2006, 2007 was the moment where I just like, I need to make a change here. And you know, and I did. I made the 2007 squad, and yeah, had a pretty good set of pool games. I was the highest try scorer in those pool games at that point, and got to the England quarter final, and got dropped for Adam Ashley Cooper.
No way.
Yeah.
So okay, you played really well in the group stages.
Yep.
And was there one game before the quarterfinal or the quarterfinal?
No, straight in the quarter. So I played Fiji, Wales, Canada, and Japan.
And what was the reason?
I scored 7 tries. I don't know. He didn't give me one. He just said, "I'm going to go with Adam," and so Swoop got a start.
Yeah.
And I got on for maybe the last 15 minutes or something like that.
What's it like being a part of a World Cup, like one of the biggest sporting events in the world?
Mate, it's epic. Like, and I played in 3, and each of them were different for different reasons, right? Like 2007, I was young, I was 23.
Yeah.
It was a foreign-speaking country. It was all in France. We were based in Montpellier the whole time. Like the country really got around it. Like it was pretty. I don't know. It was just like it was an amazing thing to be around. But also we had a pretty handy side, and to bow out in the quarterfinals was like a huge letdown. Yeah. So we kind of went away from that pretty bitter. 2011, I dislocated my ankle like 3.5, 4 months before the World Cup.
Yeah. Okay.
Break it and dislocate it in Queensland. Played 20 minutes of club footy, got picked in that squad. Was probably not conditioned well enough. Got picked on history, which I'll be thankful forever from Robbie Deans, but just didn't have the miles on my legs. Yeah. Played a couple of games. Once I started doing the double session days, I was playing against Russia. Like I'd scored a couple. I was going for a hat trick. Went to pick up a ball, like a loose ball, popped my hemi. Oh. Next day on a flight out. So pretty, you know, again, a premature end to my World Cup. I was in the pool stages. I was home. I watched the boys play in the semi-final from like San Francisco. I'd been to a festival overlooking Alcatraz.
What festival was it?
I don't know what it was. I just went to see some friends, and we went to some festival and got home. By the time we got home, Australia were playing New Zealand because I couldn't be in the country. No replacement could come to New Zealand until I'd been shipped out. So
really?
Yeah, and my parents were going over to watch me and the team play in the quarters onwards, but I was on the flight home, and they're like, "Oh, we feel bad." I was like, "No, why?" Like I'm just going to be sitting at home. Actually, inevitably, I wasn't sitting at home watching it, but so that was tough, right? Because I was disappointed that I was filthy. You know, tore my hamstring, ankle wasn't great, and went home early again. So, but New Zealand, like they got around it. Obviously, they love their rugby there. So, and there's a lot of culture over there, which is like, you know, you're immersed in. So that World Cup outside of the footy stuff was great.
And so 2007, we'll take it back to 2007. This is also when you signed for Western Force. Yeah. Is this their inaugural year?
No, I went there in their second year.
The second year.
Yeah.
What was it? So what was the decision to leave the Reds? Was it
money?
Money?
Yeah, 100%. Like, sure, like when you're 23 or whatever, you try and pretend that it's something else. And look, it was money, but also what we talked about earlier. Like I did want change because change is what I'm familiar with. Yeah. But there was a company back in the day, some may have remembered it, Firepower. It's like a fraudulent company.
Oh, what?
That like was just, it was a sponsor of the Western Force that that was sponsored. They owned the Sydney Kings when they went under. That was because it was owned by this company, or like the bloke that ran it, Tim Johnston. V8 supercar team were Firepower. The Rabbitohs were sponsored by Firepower. Western Force, all this, right? And so I went over there in a deal that was facilitated by the Western Force at the time. They've never admitted it, because if they were, then they'd be sanctioned and whatever. But I mean, they've like denied being in meetings where I was with the CEO of the company and president and CEO of the rugby team and my partner at the time, right? They're like, no, we weren't there. I'm like,
okay.
So anyway, but yeah, that was like 50% of my wage for 3 years.
As in that company was...
Yeah, it just didn't turn up.
Just didn't turn up.
Yeah, because the company was fraudulent. Like,
so what
basically it was like a fuel additive or like a dialysis machine for fuel refinery companies or something. So like back in those days, carbon credit trading or whatever between countries was huge. And like the guy was crafty, right? Like he'd been on like Current Affair, and there's all sorts of different books and stuff written about him and how he pulled the wool over all these mum and dad investors, right? Basically get him to invest on something that sounded legit but didn't actually exist. And he was just like spending everyone's money.
No way. So he basically raised capital for an idea or patent that didn't work.
And was having like meetings with the Prime Minister of Australia, with the President of Russia, and getting photos or whatever to try and like substantiate the story. But all it was, they didn't say that those leaders went, fuck off, mate.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. But like kind of, using it as evidence to say that it's legit. But
no way. Because like you go to investors and be like, here's me with ex-president, they're considering purchasing out.
So then they go, oh, okay, then great, then we'll give you a grant through the Australian government, and then because they get a grant, that's almost further endorsement that it's actually legit and whatever. Thing. So like it just sort of started to evolve, right?
It's like the woman founder recently that's a big fan of Steve Jobs. She had a patent for some blood. There's a big show about it. I forgot his name now. But anyway, similar situation. Like she had this idea of being able to test your blood with just a pinprick or something.
Yeah, I remember something about that.
And it was just all fraudulent. Like it just didn't exist. But she raised billions of dollars.
Yeah, right.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah, well, so that was a tough one, mate, because that was a real life lesson in the sense that I should never do anything for money.
Yeah, okay.
Like that shouldn't be the motivating factor. And look, it's an expensive lesson.
When the money's not coming in,
mate.
Are you angry at Western Force because you're like,
because they weren't they were denying different things. Then I was angry at like the guy because he would go on tours and stuff with us, like with his family and stuff. Like
the audacity.
Like, mate, I was like, honestly, I was there 3 years, and 3 years. When I say 3 years, the first half of each of those 3 years, because the second half you pretty much based on the East Coast of the Wallabies. But I was just chasing meetings. Like chasing cash, like as much as I could on my days off. Like I didn't get to Rottnest Island once in the 3 years I lived there.
No way.
My uncle and auntie lived 3 hours north and didn't even visit them once. Like, I was just like, and I became so toxic, so negative because of this. And I allowed the financial situation I was in to dictate and determine the mood that I was in, but also the person that my friends and family were getting as well. Which at the time I probably wasn't really that aware of. But, after the fact, it kind of got to a point where I'm like, I just need to go back east.
Yeah, okay.
And I need to be closer to... Because also, like, Perth's, like it's a 5 hour flight, but it's long enough for people to come for like, if they visit, they don't really come for a weekend. They come for a week or two.
Yeah.
So you're getting like less visitors, like less regularly and whatever.
Yeah.
So like it is a bit isolating. Plus I'm going through all this and then like, you think you're going over there for this reason, then it's like absolute haircut of that.
So when you're speaking to because it's easy for, and again, this is all assumptions, I don't know, but it's easy for Western Force to go, oh well, he was fraudulent, but at the end of the day, an amount was agreed to. They're your employer. Yeah,
but see, because it was a third party deal and there's not allowed to be facilitation between clubs and third parties.
Okay, so they're pretending like they had literally nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
and that you would source it yourself.
It must be said as well, it's not the current regime at the Western Force, so I don't want any of this to kind of come back onto the current people. But there was times, and it wasn't just myself. Matt Giddo was there, Ryan Cross, formerly in Union player. There was probably about 8 of us that were sponsored by Firepower, and we all got hung out. Like, none of us felt supported because like we had a meeting, I remember the night before a Queensland Reds game at Suncorp, like at 10 o'clock at night, they brought us all in. What? And they said, we were like, you guys were there? And they were like, well, no, we weren't there. And we're like, like we're playing the next day, and we like the leaders of our club were telling it like we're lying to us, and like, and I get it. I do get it now that I'm older, because if they had been implicated, then the Western Force, as we know it, probably wouldn't have existed after their second year, right?
And like that's not good for rugby.
It's not. Yeah, it's not good for anyone, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not getting any money. If that happens, but so I get it. I just think it could have been communicated a lot better.
Yeah, or maybe some kind of, I guess, just an. I know it's hard for them, to be honest, because like then if you go out and repeat what they said, but I guess some trust, I guess, between, look, guys, this is the reality of the situation, and then I guess show at least some empathy as to what's happened to you boys. To a degree. And so okay, so that happens. Did you have success at the Western Force though as a team, or not really?
Look, we definitely progressed. We had a pretty good side at that time. We were just outside the top 4.
Which isn't bad for like Super Rugby with the New Zealand sides.
Yeah, and that was New Zealand, South Africa back in those days, and we were just outside the finals. But then, and then I don't know, like I was there 7, 8, and 9, 2007, 8, and 9. We got close, but like they've done better since. But then obviously they've been out of the comp and back in. Like the Western Force story is still one that's been written now. But I mean it define success. We didn't win a comp. We didn't make finals, but we definitely progressed from where we were in the first year.
Yep. And what about you personally, your footy? So you make your way back in 2007. Did you feel like you were progressing each year and becoming, I guess, when you're a rookie, you come in, and even if you're great, you're still not expected to constantly impact games. But I feel like at this point in your career, you're probably now expected to. If you don't impact games, you haven't had a...
Yeah. And that was my expectation as well. And I played a fair bit of fullback over in the Western Force. That's where I sort of grew up playing. Played a lot of wing at the Reds because it's Chris Latham, obviously. And then that was another thing, I guess, when I'm, without being too hard on myself about why I went to the Western Force, as an opportunity to play fullback as well. Yep. But myself and Cam Shepherd kind of shared that role. But yeah, I mean, I felt like my game was getting better. But I also think that because of the team that we're in, talking about before the makeup of the squad, it was actually probably one of the youngest squads in Australia at that point. So, Matt Giddo at number 10, a couple other sort of seniorish players. But like, whilst I was still young, I started having a bit more of a voice in the side and a bit more of a senior position, because I was one of a few Wallabies in that squad. And I guess by default, having those representative honours gave me at least a little bit of leadership, I suppose, in that squad. Yeah.
And so 2009, you agreed to 2009 leading into 10 to the Waratahs. What was the reasoning for that?
Mate, I enjoy Sydney. Each time we go to the Wallaby camps, Sydney's always appealing. I'm also, I think part of me was also like, New South Wales. I'm keen to represent them. I spoke to the Reds when I was about to come back, and I was pretty close, to be fair, to signing with them. But I don't know what it was in the sort of towards the back end of that decision-making process where I'm like, no, I'm going to play at the Waratahs. I think also because the Waratahs were consistently playing finals. And I was like, I want to go there and win something. That was probably the biggest one, I think, because at the time the Reds were going through, still from when I left to then as well. Like this was, the Reds really probably started to turn around at that time where I could have gone to the Reds, right? Because I had that run into the 2011 premiership with Ewan McKenzie. But until that point, like they'd been to their own standards underperforming, and I wanted to go to a team that was competing consistently at finals. And
so you go to the Waratahs, and did you have success over the three-ish year period?
Again, to find a success, we had some tough years. I remember getting booed off SFS.
No way.
I felt like playing against the Cheetahs, and mate, we had to host a fan forum, for basically fans to come and just lay into us. And I was one of the 4 players that was put on the panel to answer questions and to try and alleviate and settle everyone's tensions. But yeah, I mean, it's I guess it's understandable, right? People pay their hard earned to come and watch you play, and if it's not so much the losing, it's probably the nature and how we're losing, and I guess probably the lack of fight at times. But we also made some finals in those periods as well. And then just my time there was probably most hampered by a pretty bad injury.
Yeah, with the clash of was your ankle shattered, dislocated ankle?
Yeah, so ankle sort of spun around the other way, and fractured my fibula, and it went back in pretty well. It was, like I said before, 4 months before the World Cup. I had some more issues after that though. Like there was a spur that grew where the pin was, and then that spur basically just, like I had a tendon on the inside of my foot, the tib post tendon, which stops you from going flat-footed. Just kept rubbing over it, and then eventually that ruptured. And so I was 2012. I had to sit down with my agent, and he said, "Mate, prognosis isn't great. We have to start looking at life after footy."
No way.
And from that moment on, like I didn't hear a word in that meeting. Like I said, like if your foot goes flat-footed, there's no chance I'm coming back to play.
Yeah, and your speed is your asset too.
Right, exactly. So I'm like, okay, life after footy at 26, 27 or something. Not the greatest, especially when I didn't go through with that uni degree earlier. It was pretty upsetting. I was in a boot, and we're going to, the last ditch effort was to try and do a tendon transplant from underneath my foot and put it around the base of the ankle there. And weirdly, I was up in Queensland with my parents for Father's Day, and I was playing with my nieces and nephews in like one of those Nintendo Wii things where you run in front of the screen or whatever. And I took my boot off, and I was like, well, it's getting fixed anyway. I may as well just like, it's busted.
Yeah,
like, whatever.
Fine.
What more can I do? And I was able to I started to walk on it, and I was able to run on the spot, and I started to jump a bit, and I was hopping. I was like, fuck, this is weird.
No way.
So I went down on Monday, went to the doctor, and I showed her. I said, Sharon, don't get upset with me, but I've done this. And she was like, I'm upset with you. I was like, yeah, but if I didn't do this, we wouldn't know. But then she took me straight across to the surgeon, in front of the podiatrist, everyone. They just they couldn't understand. So apparently it's somehow the two ends of the tendons attached itself, and it started to regenerate somehow. There's literally they honestly, I still go now as a commentator to Queensland or to the Waratahs games, and surgeons who are on the sideline, at the games, I'll come up and go, how's that ankle? I still can't get my head around it.
Really?
There was no, and they just said, okay, Drew, if we do the transplant, there's 20% chance it'll work.
Yeah.
Let alone that it'll work to a point where you can play professional footy, right?
Yeah.
So that's not great prognosis. So if it's attached now and you can actually function, let's just go. And we can do this in a month if it breaks down, or a year, or however long. And I still haven't had any issues with it.
That is wild.
Yeah.
That is it's so just doesn't happen. That
I know,
does not happen.
Honestly, each of the doctors and the medical professionals, they still, whenever I see them, they just be like, still don't know.
Have they looked at the previous scans and been maybe we
I had
misread
the
it?
tendon sheath shaved back, and it was it properly ruptured.
Yeah.
Where it peels back and whatever.
So they've reviewed everything.
Yeah.
To make sure.
And
that
they just there's literally two ends.
No way.
Yeah.
That's actually wild.
And so I even got to the point where I'm when I came back playing in Waratahs, but then more so in Toulon, I'm I didn't even strap my ankles or anything. I'm like,
what?
I feel like if I'm relying on a bit of tape to hold my ankle together, then I shouldn't be playing.
Yeah, wow.
And I just like to feel a bit more free than
free in that.
Yeah.
They made it at the Broncos. They made it
compulsory
to strap ankles. We weren't allowed to play footy unless we had our ankle strap.
Yeah, I never got around that. I just thought, if we're relying a bit of Leuco tape or something, then we probably shouldn't be out there.
Yeah, it's and you're right. It does stiffen the ankle up quite a bit. And look, this is just Google and the internet.
Yeah.
But I've read some people feel that strapping can actually be worse.
Right.
For the so anyway, okay. So then you're at the Tars, and then you decide. Before we get further, what's your most memorable game against the All Blacks?
Well, that first one, for the reasons I spoke about before, probably against. I think I played them 16 or 18 times and won twice or three times.
Out.
Not great, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not alone in that stat either. So maybe Hong Kong. We played them up in Hong Kong, and we just it was a game where James O'Connor kicked that the conversion after after the siren to win it.
Yeah.
There's a game where Quaid and the Richie, which I heard you guys speak about a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
Richie and Quaid
Busta.
kind of had that little push after that try, right?
Yep.
I had scored a try down the left. Ashley Cooper scored a really good try from about halfway out. Like it was just like we had this back line: Genya, Quaid, Giddo, Ashley Cooper, myself, Kirtley, James O'Connor. Like it was just like all out attack. We probably weren't great at defence.
It's crazy though, like how different it is now. And like I hate to be too negative, but like they were all household names.
Yeah.
Whereas like, and this is no disrespect to the current crop, but like I don't know any current player.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's probably where we talk about engagement and that type of thing. We as a game need to get better. I think even broadcasting we can try and because I think. Even like little things in rugby league, right? Like you feel like Jonathan Thurston because of his laugh, or Josh Adokar because of his laugh and his character, and Sam Thaiday. Like they just do really well. And obviously there's different platforms to do that and to allow that to happen, but do really well to celebrate the player and the star and really put them up as in the lights as a star. And that's where we've got to get to. Like and that's with marketing from Rugby Australia and their club teams and Super Rugby teams, but also. Celebrating them as in their story because everyone's got a different story.
100%.
Right?
If I'm rugby, I would start small and I would literally just hire someone like me for rugby.
Are you trying to get a gig?
No.
Mate, I might know someone. We've got a pretty appealing. We could be in France, the Beak in France later on this year.
France, stop it.
Yeah.
But like, I think that would like I would make it like so I wouldn't be the official page of the Wallabies.
Yeah.
But I would, if I was the union board, I would fund it.
Yeah.
And to make it look, it's your external thing. You're not officially with us or whatever, and that would be the way to engage the young audience and get people in. And it would be super cost effective because you're going to pay some ex player, I don't know, $80K a year or whatever it is. And again, I only played 40 games, so you could find a guy like that. And that would be a guerrilla way to get back into the kind of
into the people.
But so back to the Hong Kong game against the All Blacks, and so is that the most memorable game?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, memorable for positive reasons.
Yeah.
I remember facing a haka at Eden Park, and I was sort of standing there. Obviously, pretty daunting place because of the history of our results there. There's nothing about the stadium, right? Like everyone's like, why is it about the Eden Park? I'm like, tell you what it is about the Eden Park is the 15 blokes you're playing against. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
But there was one time I remember, it's like one of those sort of cool memories where I was watching the haka and there was like literally a lightning storm going on behind them. So like they're doing their haka and as they're going like this, like it was pouring rain. It was like lightning. I was like it was theatre, right? And I was like,
so hectic.
And people like say, oh, it's unfair advantage for the All Blacks. I'm like, nah, like when you just witness raw emotion, like it's hard not. Like I'm getting like goosebumps now. Like it's hard not to get like emotionally elevated from that, right?
Yeah.
And some people say that it's actually detrimental for them because they're on such a high that it's always better to kick off to them, right?
Yeah.
Because then fine motor skills might be out a little bit or whatever. Yeah. But that's why
adrenaline dumps, all that kind of
that's
stuff.
why they now try and do like 2 or 3 minutes of hitting pads and stuff after the haka.
Okay.
I'm like, you can't take 2 or 3 minutes to do your haka, then another 2 or 3 minutes to do
that's a job.
You can't get both.
I think any professional athlete that feels it's an advantage, hand in your pro athlete card now. If that doesn't make you go, all right, you're like, it amps me. Let's fucking go.
I think it's great. Like, I think it's great because they're celebrating their culture.
Yeah.
But two, I think it's great theatre. And three, facing it, like, it's just like, even like just, you just feel the grips of you, like, getting them again. Like, look at that.
It's crazy.
Like, like you're feeling the grips tighten from the teammates next to you.
Yeah.
Like,
you're about to
like when they sit there and they
boys.
go, like, they hit some sort of, like, one part of it or whatever, and you just, like, you just get a bit of a squeeze. Because, like, in unison, you just sort of know that, okay, we're in this together. Like, and we're up against it, but we're here for it.
Because it galvanises you guys.
Yeah.
It brings yous together and go, we're going to battle, boys. Like,
Yeah.
we're ready. So, mate, I think it's such a unique part of union. And I know they do it in other sports, but union is it's a unique selling point that you don't really see much of in any other sport.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think obviously, credit to the All Black staff and whatever, and the amount of time they put into it, because it's always like, it's well drilled. Yeah. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And
it is theatre. Like, it is so well done.
But you can you see how much it means to them, and, I think hopefully, in terms of culture and that type of stuff, that we start making up some ground in that area as well.
And so in terms of, obviously you have respect for the All Blacks, obviously, and I'm sure that you're friends with a lot of them off the field. But is there, hatred's the wrong word, but when you're playing the All Blacks, is it like for example, at the Broncos, when we used to play the Storm, and I know this is a much smaller scale, guys, but you could cut the air with how fucking much we wanted to beat these blokes.
Yeah. I mean, I look, there's definitely that. Like in the dressing rooms, it's different. Like Bledisloe week, the build-up's always different. I started in, 2005, my first game against them, and we haven't won it. Like, I've never won it. Just before me, I think it was 2003 or something like 2002 or 3 that we won it last time. So, there's more than a generation of players that have never touched it, So there's a real desire for everyone that's been, but also there now, and I'm sure that are coming to break this drought. But I know it's a hard one, mate, because you know what it's like as well. If you go out there with like this sort of like hatred and I don't know, like you can get distracted by that, and then all of a sudden you're overlooking the detail and you're shooting out the line and becoming individual, and someone gets through or whatever that. So there's a balance of like wanting to get one over them, but also trying to stay real present that you can still execute. And there are times, there are times where we got beaten by a better team, a number of times, but there's also times where we didn't help ourselves either.
Yeah, it's just interesting because like I think there are certain teams that it's just different. There's just something there that just makes it a bit more, means a lot more.
I mean, I think, there's always remarks and whatever that you kind of hold on to, and you're like, fuck, like, give us another chance, or, like whatever it might be. But I mean, I think, like now that I'm out of it now, and you kind of just got to just suck it up and go like, good on them. Like they stayed at the top for a very long time.
Mate.
And when I say they stayed, like that's presuming they're not there now.
Yeah.
World rankings, they're not at number 1 now, but they're still obviously beating us in Bledisloe's. But like to be able to be hunted and stay up there for that period of time is also pretty impressive.
And also a bit of pub ammo. I hope it's accurate. Australia's highest try scorer in a World Cup history.
Well, in all World Cups, yeah. So that's sort of my claim to fame. I guess I don't have too many other records or things, but
so how many tries is it?
So I got 14 tries at World Cups, and Brian Abana and Jonah Lomu have 15. So that's of the men's. I think Portia Woodman from the women's has surpassed all of us.
Only one behind the great Lomu and Hart.
I actually think that it was rude of Brian to try and equal him. He was obviously a former teammate of mine at Toulon, and we were playing at Toulon at the same time that we were playing at that World Cup 2015.
Yeah.
And Habsy was just chasing another try. Like he just wanted nothing more than to surpass, like to go past Jonah. But I don't know, I just feel like Jonah probably should have sat there on top of the throne by himself.
Mate, he's absolutely.
That's why I dropped a few balls.
Okay, so you decide to go over to Toulon.
Yep.
Now, when you decided, I think the eligibility rules were that you basically couldn't play for Australia.
Yeah, so that was part of the decision, is that I'm going over to France and I'm foregoing any chance to play for Australia again. And Michael Check was the coach of the Waratahs. He's like, mate, don't go. And I was like he was telling me, mate, like you don't have to go to France. And I was like, mate, my last contract negotiation, you were trying to get me to Stade Francais because he was coaching over there. I was like, don't turn around now just because you want me to stay. I went to Toulon. I had a bigger offer at a couple other clubs, but I just thought it was really important to go somewhere with some familiarity. And Matt Giddo was at Toulon. I was the best man at his wedding, he and Bianca.
Can I just ask quickly about Giddo? And look, I love a shit haircut. Like, I fucking love it.
Yeah.
But did the boys give it to him?
Mate,
he had some iconic...
Honestly, he was like... I just didn't really speak to Gits when I first joined the squad because he was too quick-witted.
Oh, really?
He just put you on spotlight and just put you on under the burner. And I spoke to him, but I'd never give him, he had the little symbols in the side, and he had the skunk hair. But Eddie Jones used to make them shave it.
Really?
Yeah, he'd be like, no, you're gonna be known for your football, not your haircut. Like Eddie Jones used to make us spray paint our boots black. So no one's wearing white boots. Like you're going to be known for your footy.
Literally spray paint.
Yeah, like if you got to game day and you're in the sheds and you're putting your boots on and you didn't like the colour, he'd get the manager and just go shh and spray your boots.
No way.
Because he wanted you to be known for your football rather than
your boots.
what you're wearing. Yeah.
That's so old school.
But Gitz had some shit cuts, didn't he?
But I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. Like, please don't confuse this with me.
Yeah.
The shitter the haircut, the better the bloke. I honestly reckon that is a fucking that's an equation that always works out.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling getting around this mullet trend, eh?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I love it because when you see a mullet, it's so Australian now. Like, you usually know they're an Aussie. Like, when I was over in Europe, as soon as I saw a mullet, I listened to them talk, boom, Aussie straight away.
Yeah.
So, look, I'm around it.
I think anyone that's like, you have a career and you go back and we've all had some shit cuts.
Oh.
Like, back, I think earlier I had like I actually had a little bit of a mullet, but the David Beckham sort of mohawk mullet.
I was going to say
like,
the Beckham. Yeah.
And then obviously the Bieber long hair / Carol Brady. I mean, I had some bad ones, but I mean, it's a rite of passage, right?
It really is. Are you a rugby league or a rugby union player if you haven't had a shit haircut?
Yeah.
I don't think you are.
Yeah, I don't think so. Actually, when I was a real young fella doing little athletics out at Warringah, I remember I've got a photo doing long jump, and I had basically, I don't know who did it, but basically just shaved right across here. So I had a proper flowing mullet, but I had also a frollet, like just parting at the front as well.
Holy
I don't know,
shit.
like, just like that. Just
That is
over there.
fucking right up.
Frollet mullet, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was bad.
So you decide to go to Toulon, and also you have quite a bit of success there. Several European and French crowns. What was the time over there like?
Mate, it was unbelievable. Like, I went over there into a team that had won the European Championship just before I got there. You've got players, Carl Heyman, Chris Marcelli, Bucky's Bolter, Ali Williams, Juan Fernandez Lobe, like Johnny Wilkinson was our captain.
Johnny.
Yeah, like, Gitz was there at 12.
Never forgive him for that heartbreaking.
No, I know.
2003, was it?
Yeah, 2003. I've given him an atomic wedgie, so I feel like I've got like a little bit back. But, like being able to then partner up with Brian Abana on the wings, having faced him so many times, at Super Rugby as well as International Rugby, Lee Halfpenny, Dylan Armitage, all these guys. Like, we just had like our owner kind of use it as like a real life dream team kind of set up, like where you're putting your team together, like super coach, whatever. Yeah. And we had a coach, Bernard Laporte, he's in a bit of strife at the moment with fraud and tax evasion and all sorts of stuff. He's like the vice president of World Rugby now, and I think he's in a bit of strife. But anyway, he was our coach, who just kind of came down, and he was a bit more of a motivator, but not really. Like, we didn't have to do any contact in any session.
What?
He's like, there's enough opportunity in the games we play to get injured, so I'm not going to put you in that now. We're like, sweet.
This is the best.
And you got Juan Smith and those guys I just mentioned. I'm like, we get to a game anyway, and I was in a position where I'm like, I don't want these guys to think that I'm a pussy or I don't deserve to be out in the same field as these guys because I've been playing against them for so long. I want them to think that I'm worthy of being out there, right? So that was sort of like my motivation. And so, like, we didn't necessarily have to have those things to kind of to switch us on or to motivate us. Like, there was enough motivation in that team. And, when you look around in that huddle and there's like it was a weapon team, mate. Like, it was ridiculous. And we won 3 European titles on the trot. We won the double one year where we won the Heineken Cup at Millennium Stadium in Wales. The very next weekend, we won the top 14 championship in Paris.
Oh, really?
And like that week, we trained once, and that wasn't even sober. Like, we were like,
oh my,
like, mate, it was ridiculous. It's like the Barbarians team, right?
Yeah.
And just to win that double and then to come back home on basically flew in, got on a boat around into the port, 120,000 people on the shoreline. Mate, it was like incredible. Like,
was this the best period of your career enjoyment wise?
Yeah. Because also I could go home from training. I couldn't speak the language, so I didn't watch French TV. I didn't read the papers. I didn't know what they were saying about me or about us. Like, I was just like, footy's like, when I turn up, I do it. Yeah. And I do it hard and I do it well. Yeah. But when I go home, like, I'm on that rosé.
No,
I've got like the baguette into the roasted camembert cheese, and like I was enjoying it, but also doing what I needed to do. Because of that mutual respect for my teammates as well. I didn't want to be the one that kind of got there and took the piss and didn't perform.
What was your most memorable game from when you were over in Toulon, do you reckon? Over in France?
I think selfishly, probably the Heineken Cup final against Clermont at Twickenham was our third one. And I scored it basically because I scored a try that kind of put us out, basically won it for us. But it kind of, the reason I choose that, whilst it's probably somewhat arrogant sounding, is because that was also the time that I walked into the sheds after that try and Michael Cheika gave me a call and said, "You're coming home to play in the World Cup."
Oh, wow.
So that was at Twickenham, obviously where the World Cup was going to be that year. I already knew that Gitz was been speaking to Czech for ages. And so there was a long period of time I'm like, oh, did he say anything about me or not? Because he was basically changing the law, right?
Yeah. Changing
the laws, like we just spoke about before, if you play overseas, you can't get picked. They changed the laws so if you've played 60 games or 7 years of service, whatever, then you're eligible. And so I knew that he was speaking to Gitz, but he'd no mention of me.
Yeah.
And then I got in from the sheds after that game and I had a missed call and a voicemail from Czech saying, "Mate, give me a buzz." I was straight into like a quiet room and then gave him a call and he said, you're coming back. It wasn't a guarantee that I was at the World Cup, but I was coming back for the Rugby Championship to then, prove myself that I'm playing well enough. And so I think the significance, obviously, of the try, the winning of the championship, but for me to be able to come home and, because like I said, my last 2 World Cups weren't, bowed out at quarterfinals. Yeah. Went home injured after the pool stages. I didn't have the greatest run. Also scored some tries. That was pretty much all I did at them, right? Yeah. I didn't achieve anything. So to come home and to go to another one was pretty special.
And because you would have been what, 28, 29, maybe even close to 30?
When was that?
When you got called back into the squad?
30, 31 maybe.
Did you think maybe that even though you're playing good footy, that because of your age, you might have been past, or no, not really?
No, I mean, I just thought, honestly, Gitz and I, we got picked up. A driver picked us up from Toulon to Nice. We had a couple of bottles of champagne in the car.
Nice, beautiful place.
Yeah, and we just honestly, we made a pact. We're like, okay, we're doing this together, and if one of us quit, we're quitting on behalf of the other. So have that in your head when you're about to tap out. Yeah, that we're doing it together. And because there was people in the press, there were coaches that were involved at the time saying that they don't believe that we should be picked. So we knew that there was going to be some fractions and there's some tensions that people didn't back us coming back. And maybe rightfully so, who knows? But because we didn't go over there with the expectation of getting picked. They changed the rules. Of course, we're going to sit there and say yes to the option. Right? Yeah. But yeah, it was a tricky one. I remember Gitz saying, "Mate, where do we sit on the bus?" I said, "In our fucking seats." He's like, "Yeah, but there's other people." I was like, "No, mate, they're our seats. I'm one from the back on the right. You're opposite me on the left." And he's like, "Oh, can you save it?" I said, "Mate, you can get your seat." And of course, come back and he'd take his seat and whatever. But it wasn't so much about the arrogance thing. I just was like, the moment we sit there and say, project that we are unsure or we don't have confidence in ourselves and being in that situation, it becomes obvious to everyone. I was like, we've got to just go in there and back ourselves and believe that we should be there. Yeah,
absolutely. So what was that World Cup like for you?
Mate, it was good. It was tough to begin with. we were going over to a pre-World Cup camp at Notre Dame University, playing Chicago in a pre-World Cup warm-up game, and Michael Cheika pulled me aside and said, "Mate, so you're not going to play in Chicago. You're in Fat Club." I was carrying a bit of extra baguette and cheese. There's nothing worse than obviously being told you're going to miss out on a game, but to miss out on a game because you're fat is always a bit of a bruise to the ego.
Especially as a back.
Yeah, and the only other person in the fat squad was Will Skelton, who was 156 kilos,
as a
right?
winger.
Yeah, and so there were times through that Notre Dame camp where we'd train hard and whatever, and then there'd be a piece of sort of knowledge and understanding where the players would go in and learn a bit of detail. Yeah. And Will and I would go over and they'd put harnesses on us and they just we're working out, crawling up the field and just getting pumped. And at the time, again, I was filthy, but I stripped the weight off and started the World Cup on the bench. No, sorry, out of the match day squad. And then I think Rob Horn got injured against Fiji maybe, or England, or whichever it was. Kind of gave me a chance to get a start, and then I just held down my spot after that. Went all the way through. we weren't really that well fancied going into this World Cup, and we had our last 5 games all at Twickenham.
Oh,
so we
really?
played Fiji, then Uruguay, then we had England, Wales, quarterfinal, semi, and final all at Twickenham.
Wow.
And it just became familiar for us. Like even like you used to flip for the home change room, and because those first 2 games we had the away change room, we end up just forfeiting the toss and just always wanting the away because it was familiar to us.
Yeah, okay.
Otherwise, you're going in on game day and there's like unfamiliar surroundings. You don't know where the tape is. You don't know where the scissors are. You don't know all those little things that can just be enough to throw you. We just sort of felt like we're at home for those 5 games.
Yeah.
We went all the way through to the World Cup final, and mate, I wouldn't be alone in saying this, that we went to bed the night before just thinking we're gonna be fucking world champions tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah. Except there was 23 All Blacks that said it as well. And as history shows, they were telling the truth, we weren't.
and I mean, what do you remember from you're running out in a World Cup final, bro? Yeah,
I know. Like that was like pretty surreal, you know. Like this is like, it's one thing to be there, but like we also knew like we're fucking not here just to make up the numbers. Like we were there to like, you know, to achieve what it was. But you know, it's probably more so afterwards where you're like, you know, you're upset and you're filthy and, you know, it's so many different emotions, but then you're like, you know, family there, all that sort of stuff. And you're like, still pretty epic. Once you can kind of remove the disappointment from it, like it was an achievement, but that's the weird thing, right? Like some people say, what's your best memory? And it's like, it's the best, but it's also the worst.
Yeah.
Like we're getting to a World Cup finals is like fucking huge, right?
Yeah.
But it's also like, it's pretty shit. Like I've not gone back and watched it.
Wow, really?
I had a few people send some clips and whatever. I think I dropped a ball when we were chasing the game at the end and Burden Barrett ran 100 to score.
Ouch.
A lot of people find humour in sending me that clip a fair bit. But yeah, I don't know. Like we lost Gitz early. Gitz went off with the HIA.
Yeah.
And he was pretty crucial to us at that point.
Yeah.
Kane Douglas went off early as well. He did his ACL. So we're up against it. Early in the second half, I got taken off. I had a head clash with Nehemiah Nascutta. They took me off, and then I had to take my boots off, sit me down, give me 5 words. And I was always like pretty understanding of like, you know, like red truck, apple, fire, whatever. And I'd make up a sentence like the red truck was on fire. The red truck carrying apples was on fire, you know, whatever it might be, right? So I could remember them. And then they do like some questions about who you're playing, where you are, what day, and that sort of stuff. And then they made me, it's like a sobriety test where you had like a strapping tape, you know, straight out in the line on the floor, and I had to walk out heel and toe, turn around and walk back heel and toe. And they said, "Sorry, mate, you can't go back on." I was like, "Why's that?" And they said, "Oh, you didn't do it quick enough." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Oh, you had to do it under 17 seconds." I said, "Mate, you didn't tell me anything about time." I said, that's a critical piece of information.
Yeah.
I said, like, you've got to give me a chance to do it underneath, like under that time.
Yeah.
Like that's like the most critical, other than like deviating off the line, that's the most critical piece of information. And so they gave me another chance. And of course, like if I'm at a point where I'm able to argue this argument, right? Like I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was able to do it quick enough, and they asked me the 5 words, and I told them my story, and then put my boots back on and went back out. But so there was plenty happening, you know, and then Dan Carter kicking the last conversion with his opposite foot. Like I'm mates with DC now, and even then, but like now more so. And he was like, I think Liam Messam dared him to do it through the week, and
no way.
It sort of just was one opportunity, like, you know, he just dropped goal with his opposite foot.
Oh.
And like, in a World Cup final, you're taking the piss. I think it may have been his final conversion of his Test career, actually.
Oh, no way.
So good on him.
Yeah, fucking fair play to him.
Just another time he beat us.
Man.
He beat us up in Toulon as well for Racing. The bloke, I don't know.
Play.
He's all right.
He goes all right.
Yeah, but even Sonny, you know, he just won the gold medal that we wanted to win, and he gave it to someone in the crowd. You're like, Jesus, can these blokes rub any more salt in the wound? But obviously it was a nice gesture. But, no, it was just, look, it's one of those things. I think growing back, I'm proud of it, but would I have liked it to go on better? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And then retirement. When did you make, like, it's happening?
Mate, this is, like, I was sitting in a team room, in a team meeting for Toulon, and I just thought, fuck, I would rather be anywhere than where I am right now.
Wow.
Like, I just was done. And I still had 3 months left of that contract. I was renegotiating for Toulon and perhaps even in Japan. And I walked out of that meeting and I said to Gitz, I said, mate, I'm done. He goes, no, we've got Jim. I was like, no, like I'm done with footy. And he's like, wow. What do you mean? And I just went, mate, like I've had enough. Like I've got this this feeling and I'm going to back it. I'm not going to speak to any of my my family because I don't want to give them the opportunity to kind of talk me out of it. Didn't speak to my agent. So I just backed myself and the feeling that I had. And I just walked out and just wrote, I just wrote this tweet. So it's my turn to call time on my rugby career. I've been very lucky to have had the experiences I've had in our great game. Thank you. That was it.
No way.
Career done. Yeah, that's what I did. And I just thought if I allow myself to talk to others, then they'll talk me out of the feeling I just done, and I'll do it for the wrong reasons. I'll go back to doing it for money. Yeah. And I think your lasting memory is your most recent, right? And if my most recent are just hating what I'm doing, but just trying to find joy and going to the ATM, like I'll end up hating a game that gave me so much. So I just was like, nah, I've backed it. And I had obviously my phone then blew up with agents and parents and everyone going, what are you doing?
Was your agent like, what?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess he was like, once I told him, he was like, Drew, I get it. He's like, good on you. Like, good on you for backing yourself like that, right? Yeah. And then, so I went into retirement. No real plan of what I was going to do. Wasn't really that well set up financially. Wasn't real good on those sides of things. And I had a bit of a relationship with Fox Sports at the time. Got a bit of a play-by-play deal with them for the first year. But yeah, I mean, otherwise it was just like, again, back myself to make something of it.
Yeah, wow. To go out and tweet, it's like the finality of that. I mean, it's such a big thing to do, but it's clearly the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the first couple of years when you feel like maybe physically you could still go out there and compete, there's like the ego part of you thinking, I could do that. Yeah. Or I could still make this team, whatever. Yeah. But it's pure ego, right? Yeah. Like you're just like, I mean, I say I could do that. And if I had 6 weeks off, I'm shit when I come back in preseason, let alone two years off, right? Yeah. There's no way I could do that. And nor am I committed enough to get myself in a condition to do that. Yeah. So, I think once I kind of got past that point, then I'm like, now I actually can go there and watch footy and be happy for the guys and what they're achieving and be happy that I'm not in that situation anymore. Of course, I miss the environment, the atmosphere, the opportunities that, to go out there and express myself, but I don't wish that I was out there. Yeah, it's
the environment is usually what you miss the most, not the feeling bashed to death every Sunday morning or Saturday morning or whatever. It's the crew that you're with every day. Yeah, all the jokes.
It's unique. It's almost like part of some of my favorite parts of playing rugby was at school because. The reason I say that is because you go through everything together, right? From 13 to 17 or 18, whenever you finish school, you go through puberty, you go through your first kiss, your first girlfriend, your first like this first and that. First fight. You got, you're failing school or you're passing. You're going through all these formative years, right? And then you go and you train in the afternoon, and then you go out there and you have a game of footy on the weekend together. But you're like your mates, you've been through shit, right? Yeah. And then the touring side of things is the closest to that for me. Like when you're actually on long tours, 5 weeks, whatever, in Europe and UK, you're living in each other's pockets. You're in, on buses. You're going everywhere together. Yeah, there might be still fractions where you go off and do little mini dinners or whatever it might be. But for the large part, you're going through all this again together. Yeah. You're going through adversities. You're going through shit media. You're going through losses. But you're also going through the ups, and you're celebrating things. And players are getting married, and people are getting engaged. And there's milestones that you're celebrating that you do in a way that's unique to professional sport because you're just in each other's pockets so much more.
And not only do you get that camaraderie, but when you do you're achieving great things together. So you get camaraderie plus accomplishing things. It's like a perfect recipe.
And also accomplishing something that we're one of the lucky ones, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Where it's a blessing and a curse going into the retirement stuff because we get to live out a childhood dream. Yeah. But by 33, you've achieved it. Now what's your next dream? Yeah. People would say to me, this is a question I'd always avoid. Drew, what are you passionate about? Or what are you going to do next? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm passionate about what I've just fucking finished.
Yeah, sport.
And it was unfair because I'd try and think about a different profession or industry, and I'm like, it would pale in comparison. So then I'd feel really dejected, like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I'd feel overwhelmed. And it got to a point where I almost had to start to meet people in different industries and start to eliminate and narrow the options down. Yeah. Because when it was so broad and you could just do whatever, or like people were like, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Like, it was just like, that was quite daunting. Yeah. And I'd honestly, it got to a point where I'd start to avoid the question. Yeah. Wow. You know, I'd go out and people would be like, oh, and I'd be like, just sort of snake out of the conversation because I could feel it was coming. Yeah. Because I also didn't have anything at that point.
Yeah. It's so tough because you're constantly comparing to the highs of rugby league or rugby union, or whatever sport you've got. And you're going like, what other job could I ever feel like that again? You know,
and I think with my transition, right, like what I was missing in my first year is different to what I'm now missing in 5 years. Yeah. So like first year I was missing the application of skill, the repetition of skill, because, you know, at training, you're just always trying to execute. You're just that pursuit of the perfect pass that, you know, it's just like it's unattainable, but it's the pursuit of it, right? Yeah. And the other bit was the adrenaline because, you know, you run out on the field and you just get that buzz. Like it's hard to replace. And we've seen so many times with athletes of all walks trying to replace it in unsavory ways, whether it's drugs, alcohol, drinking, like, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. To try and get that high. And I started to feel like, shit, I need something like that. And rather than chasing it in unsavory ways, like I just thought, I'm going to learn how to fly a helicopter. Yep. Because I'm shit scared of heights, so I get the adrenaline. Yeah. But the skill application, because you got like a joystick, you got a handbrake thing here, and you got 2 feet pedals as well. Like the brain function and the application skill in that was exactly what I needed, right? But wow. But it was also really expensive. Yeah, wow. And also my disposable income started to dry up. And like I said before, financially I was never great. And then the bushfires happened and COVID and all the rest of it. Yeah. So I've got 25 hours up my book, but you need 50 to get a license.
How good.
But I also got to the point where engine failure was next. And I'm like, I don't know if I need to worry about this helicopter. But that's what I needed in my first 12 to 18 months of retirement. Yeah. Whereas now it's a bit more like, and why I've started the commercial real estate stuff, it's more like I need routine. Yeah. I need to chase outcomes, KPIs, get the wins, learn from the losses, that type of thing. So, and I'm sure, I don't know, 5-10 years time, there'll be other things that I'm missing. But I think what I'm trying to do is stay aware of what those things are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I ask all the boys this, favorite rapper of all time?
Favorite rapper? Well, actually, I had to get separated from a fight with Busta Rhymes.
What?
Yeah.
Walk us through how you got...
Yeah, so 2018, I signed up to do the New York Marathon. Yeah. And anyway, not a runner, not a long distance runner by any means. Got distracted by the bright lights in New York for the 3 nights before it. Yep. Off a couple of hours, ran the marathon. Was cooked on that Sunday night, but on the Monday went out to celebrate me finishing it and staying alive. Went to a nightclub. Actually ran into a couple of leaguey boys, Angus Crichton, good fellow, and Dylan Napa.
No way.
Best. And I was there with a mate of mine from school. And not from school, from outside of footy, Pete Playford. And anyway, so we're there and we're having a big night, carrying on as if I'd won the marathon, you know, buying all the bottles and all that. Yeah. And anyway, at this point, Angus and Dylan had left. I could have really used them, but I went to go and pay the bill at $5,000 US or something. Stung me, right? Yeah. Kills me. Oh my! But it's like God. 5-6 in the morning. I'm there in like this little like blue sweater with like clear lens glasses, looking like the Milky Bar kid, right? And then Busta Rhymes walks past. And I just like went, oh, Busta. And I like tapped his shoulder and he goes, don't fucking touch me, bro. And I went, oh, mate, like I'm just like, I'm a fan. He's like, fuck you. And I went, what? Oh, listen, mate, like, yeah, I'm just saying I'm a fan. And then he goes, fuck you, white ass bitch. And I went,
oh my God.
I just went, listen, mate, you don't fucking speak to people like that. I was like, and he's like kind of summoned me outside. I was like, and I've never been in a fight in my life. Like, I've never stood there and traded with anyone. Yeah, okay. But I'm like, I'm going to trade with Busta Rhymes, especially 100%. At 5-6 in the morning. Yeah. After that kind of bill, I'm like, I'm trading with this guy. And I'm happy to also, well, happy enough, at least in the theory of it, to get whacked. Yeah. Because it's also not a bad story, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so we go outside and there's all those like garbage bags on the side of the road, ready to be picked up through the morning. And he had like 3 Escalades waiting for him and all these boys, whatever, to be picked up. And I started, I started lipping up because, I'm pretty good at lipping up. And anyway, he's sort of going at me, but a couple of his guys are like ushering him to get in the car. And then I just went, mate, fucking all you've done is pimp a few people's rides, but that's exhibit. I mixed him up. Oh I know, I got him mixed up. Yeah. And so he just went and just like came charging for me. And so like, a couple of his guys were holding him, and then he's grabbed me and I've grabbed him, and then we're like tripping over the garbage bags out in front of this nightclub. My mate's behind me. My mate also got a guy that was, like less fortunate in terms of accommodation, to back us up, for a bit of cash. He's like, I'll fight Busta Rhymes for 300. So there was 3 of us there, and then the security jumped in, and it was just a melee. Like there was no like punches thrown necessarily, but like a bit of a stretch sweater and whatever. And then he got sort of like quickly put into his cars and left. And then I was like, we're like, fuck. And then the security just said, look, we saw what happened. Like, yeah, sure, he's being a dick, but it only takes someone to like try and move up in the crew and like pull something out.
Like, you're in America.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, you're not thinking that when you're heavily inebriated and dehydrated from a marathon. So anyway, back to your question. My favorite rapper, probably Busta Rhymes.
Oh, that's how good. I mean, Busta, he'll definitely be watching this podcast.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Mate. I mean, I watched him the other night on the Grammys, and he goes all right.
If he had yelled, "I'll break your neck," that would have been all time.
Yeah, I was like, well, if you Busta right.
Favorite movie of all time?
Oh, tough. I think like comedy, I'll go Step Brothers.
Yeah.
It's probably that's the one coming to mind at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic.
Yeah, and it's just like you can watch it. Any amount of times.
100%. Yeah. Sometimes the jokes get funnier the more you watch it. Yeah. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. What an incredible career. Really appreciate it, bro.
No, thanks very much, and mate, keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. Done.